No new fossil fuel licenses! No new fossil fuel licenses! This is an intervention! We will not stand for any more exploitation of the North Sea or our planet's resources! This is an intervention! No new fossil fuel licenses! No new fossil fuel licenses! No new fossil fuel licenses! This is an intervention! No new fossil fuel licenses! No new fossil fuel licenses! Cut the ties to fossil fuels! Cut the ties to fossil fuels! Inside this building behind us, they are planning to issue over 100 new licenses to explore and exploit and extract gas and oil from the North Sea. This cannot be allowed to continue. We demand an end to new fossil fuel licenses. This
So we're at BP's offices today. These rebels here for Extinction Rebellion are decorating the building, drawing attention to BP's plans to destroy our planet, to destroy our one and livable home. And the message here today is that people need to cut the ties. People need to cut the ties to the fossil fuel industry. We're asking people to step away, do the right thing. Asking people to walk away, because history will not judge people kindly who've been associated with these companies. And we're also here today as well to expose this network of companies, organisations that support and enable the fossil fuel industry.
And all of those accountable need to stop now. Cut the ties to fossil fuels. Cut the ties to fossil fuels.
Stop, that's good.
Hello everyone. We are outside the building for the Department of Business, Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy. There's been two fire extinguishers full of, and I'm getting ready for now. There's two full fire extinguishers that have been let off of synthetic oil. The two rebels who did it have stood up and taken full accountability for what they've done. The police, what time? We've been here about 20 minutes. The police have just arrived now. There's a bit of, it's biodegradable synthetic oil, so that will wash away hopefully. The brave rebels are being searched. There's two police vans here. There's a small protest as well of banner holders and people handing out leaflets. The police are sort of trying to get a bit of order. So So we're here because it's part of the Cut the Ties protest to try and cut the ties between, well, a lot of the places being protested today are commercial enterprises, but this is a government department, and it's this department that sets the energy strategy for the United Kingdom. So those more police arriving. Yep. Okay. So I'll just finish off here and then. Okay. So we're here because it's this department, this government department, that sets the environment that all the commercial companies operate in. So that's why we're here. And it's a cut the ties protest at 2 levels. First of all, to encourage the Department of Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy to cut its ties. And it's quite easy if you're a well-paid lobbying group, possibly funded by the fossil fuel industry, then you have quite good access to this department. If you're an ordinary person with a genuine concern about renewing licences, and apparently there are 900 locations that the government is offering licences for, even though it will take 10 years for them to come to fruition. If you're an ordinary person, the only way you can make your voice heard is by coming along here. Well, there are other ways, but one of them is come along with a fire extinguisher, and then people will notice, and it's a good way of standing up to show how concerned you are about the climate emergency, to get the public's attention. So hopefully this will be in the news. Looks like the police are searching the ordinary, just the banner holders and people like that. So it's a good way to stand up to show how concerned you are about something, to get the public's attention, and then it's a challenge to the government, and then the government has to respond. When the government responds, then the public gets to see the 2 points of view, and it's down to the public to see if they whether the protest is a success or not. So at the moment it's been COP27, and it's been generally regarded as a failure. And although the politicians say the right sorts of things, after 27 COPs, no one has still decided that we ought to reduce the amount of fossil fuels we're burning. So, what's going on? Everyone's being searched. I haven't been searched yet, so that'll be interesting to see if that happens.
Hi there, everybody. So we're live at the offices of BP behind me. You wouldn't be able to tell, really, would you? They're hardly shouting about it. But BP, as many of you know, is one of the biggest fossil fuel extractors in the world. And some rebels over there today have taken action to draw attention to BP's plans to basically wreck and destroy our future and make obscene profits doing it. So right now there's people in this country shivering away, trying to stressfully work out how they're going to heat their homes and eat this winter. And these guys have doubled their profits in the last quarter to $7.1 billion. Yeah, this is insane amounts of money. And we're here today asking people to cut the ties with the fossil fuel industry. We're asking people to do the right thing and step away. There is the right time now to start distancing yourself from organisations such as these, getting out there and saying enough is enough. We're not going to stand with them, because history is not going to judge kindly the people who associate themselves with these companies. We're also exposing the other companies that support and enable companies like BP and these other fossil fuel companies to continue their work. There's a network and a web of companies and organisations that lobby and promote them behind the scenes that make it difficult to make progress. And those companies will be held accountable. Those organisations will be held accountable. The time is coming, I'm sure of this. But the government isn't doing nearly enough. And to be honest, these ordinary people, they don't look that different to you and I, are taking action. They're taking matters into their own hands to expose these companies. We're saying we cannot afford this. We need to cut the ties with fossil fuels. We need to move towards a sustainable future without fossil fuels and without throwing people under the bus. We must cut the ties. And now it's time for action. Join us.
And you join us outside the London headquarters of Inios. which is one of the largest petrochemical companies in the world, and there is a protest here going on from Plastic Rebellion. We're going to try and speak to some of the activists and find out why they're here today. As you can see, the police have just turned up and are speaking to people. We have two brave rebels standing on top of the entrance to Inios with a banner that says "Cut the ties to fossil fuels." That's what today's all about. It's about joining the dots and asking people to cut the ties. Let's have a word with some people here. Hi there. Would you mind saying a few words to the XR live stream?
Sure.
Can you just explain, give your name if you want to, you don't have to, but just explain why you're here today, what's going on?
Yeah, I'm in front of a very nondescript building in Knightsbridge, headquarters of Inios, which is a plastics petrochemical company. Nobody knows this name. We know BP and Shell and all those names, but we don't know these companies that are behind those companies and use that material from those companies. Inios is a huge multi-billion pound international company, make plastics, greenwash by sponsoring sports teams, wanting you to think they're the good guys and they're not. They're polluting, they're dirty, they're pro-fracking, they import fracked oil from the United States. Yeah, and we just want to call them out. They're the people that are involved in the fossil fuel industry and they're hiding. And we want to expose them, shine the light.
Thank you very much. If you had one message for Inios, what would it be?
Cut the ties to fossil fuel and stop and be honest. And stop being so bloody greedy.
Thank you for talking to us. We're going to go down the line here, see if anyone else will talk to us. A large banner being held up here. Inios, plastic equals death.
In Islington. It's all started in the last 2 weeks. No one will...
Hi there, would you mind saying a few words to the XR live stream?
Yeah, hi, we're here outside Inios in Knightsbridge. They are probably the single biggest plastics producers in the world, and they're one of the main driving forces behind fracking, which is a really, really dirty way to extract fossil fuels. When you frack fossil fuels from the ground, the general public is led to believe that this is going to be a way to solve the energy crisis. Everything that gets extracted is going to go into cars or it's going to go for heating homes. That isn't true. Petroleum products are fractionated and only a small proportion of those fractionated elements get used to heat homes and drive vehicles. The rest of them are used for things like camping stoves and to make plastics. Inios have got, I believe, nearly all the contracts for fracking in Pennsylvania, and they're caused untold environmental destruction over there. They've also been leaning heavily on the government for licences in the UK, that's England, Scotland, all of us, for fracking licences so they can do the same. So when the government says to us, fracking is a way of ensuring our national security for fuel, it's a lie. It's a lie to the general public. And we're here to call them out and to say there's more going on here than the general public knows. We're not just against fossil fuels. Plastics are destroying the natural environment where we live. Up in Grangemouth, where they have their biggest, in the UK, their biggest industrial complex, the release of the tiny little plastics that they produce, which they ship from America, so they ship them across the Atlantic, they turn into little plastic pellets, which they use for making plastic wrapping, and everything that we use, everything around us has got plastic in it. Those are released by accident into the environment, but the company doesn't clean them up. Now there's a huge, huge population of seabirds called puffins, which are really, really iconic, and they have a massive breeding colony near Grangemouth, and these birds are ingesting the plastic. They're already under threat of extinction in our lifetime. Their numbers have gone down by 70%, and the company's doing nothing to clean them up.
Thank you so much for speaking to us. I think we're going to go somewhere else now, but thank you very much.
Thank you. Good morning people of XR UK. So I'm here outside number 1 Wood Street in London, tucked away this little gloomy side street. I think even on the sunniest of days, it'll be difficult to spot. But inside this kind of indiscreet building is a company, Evershed Sutherland, that we want to bring out into the light. And why? Because Evershed Sutherland are the legal firm that puts together the heinous injunctions whereby multinational corporations, big rollers with big bank balances can buy the law. They can buy legal acts that will seek to criminalise peaceful protesters. And one such example of that is the injunction that Evershed Sutherland helped to bring against the protests along the route of HS2. Now, this is a route-wide injunction that seeks to criminalise peaceful protest all along the route of HS2. It seeks to criminalise trespass on any land that HS2 have claimed as theirs for the construction of HS2, but also with their associated infrastructure such as car parks, compounds, all that jazz, and also seeks to criminalise interrupting the flow of traffic in and out of HS2 compounds and property, which of course means that is criminalising peaceful protest on our highways and byways, because we know that hundreds of subcontractors are involved in HS2, and therefore in their daily lives they're using our public highways for many, many miles around the HS2 property. So let's cut to the chase. How is Evershed Sutherland then involved in the fossil fuel industry? Well, we're, as you know, here to cut the ties with fossil fuels. HS2 will require 1/3 of the electricity that it takes currently to run the whole of our rail network system. I'm going to repeat that. HS2 is estimated to require 1/3 of the electricity that is required to run our current rail network. Where's that electricity going to come from? Is it going to be from renewables? Seems unlikely, given that our government is committed to 27 billion in road construction, 155 according to Tony Berkeley in HS2, only 12 billion in renewables. So that is why we're here outside Evershed Sutherland to ask them to cut the ties with HS2, cut the ties with the fossil fuel industry.
My name's Laura Baldwin. I'm an Olympic sailor, a mother, and I'm acutely aware of the fact that we are fast running out of time to act on the climate crisis. That's why I'm here today reporting on Ocean Rebellion's action outside the International Maritime Organisation here. They're calling for shipping to cut its ties with the fossil fuel industry. This is a United Nations department, and yet it is failing to meet the Climate Paris Agreement. It's refusing to regulate emissions, and it's just ignoring its environmental remit. They are not taxing fossil fuels, and they're permitting the use of heavy fuel oils. So that's been really theatrically communicated here outside the IMO by Ocean Rebellion, who have been spewing oil all over the streets. They've been pouring an oil slick filled with dead birds and bits of rubbish. They've had smoke flares going up with black billowing smoke to really highlight and show the fact that this organisation is still permitting the use of heavy fuel oils. These are like the really toxic waste products of distilling oil that's permitted to be burnt off sea. It's not allowed to be burnt here on land because it is so toxic. But honestly, wherever it is burnt in the planet, it is equally as polluting and doing as much damage to our natural living systems. So it is time for this organisation to cut its ties with fossil fuels.
Come on, let's clean this mess up.
And in come the dirty scrubbers right on cue.
Hello, how are you?
I'm good, you?
I'm good, thank you.
Oh, look at this heavy
What a mess here.
I like a bit of heavy fruit.
Pile on the green wash, everyone. Let's clear it all out.
No job too filthy for us. Oh, it's so crude. Can you just move a bit? I'm going to do a bit of green.
So you're joining us here outside the International Maritime Organisation. The dirty scrubbers behind me, they've cleaned up the pavement. All that non-toxic fake oil has been washed away down the drains. It's not doing any harm to the oceans. I wanted to make that really clear. Before I go and speak to the masterminds behind these theatrical actions, Rob and Sophie, hello. Can you just explain a bit about the sorts of actions that you're taking now, why you're taking them, how you think they're impacting and powerful? And
yeah, so all our actions are theatrical and visual, and we're trying to create a really strong visual message that can go out across the media. Basically, we want to get a picture in the papers effectively and get media headlines that way. So the message is always within what we're doing. So we've got a banner, we've got the dirty scrubbers talking.
It's just visually to the point. If you can create some way of shocking the image with minimal people is the primary thing. From just a simple efficiency point, from an activism point of view, if we end up with 50, 100 people that all end up having to then go through court proceedings, that's not a long-term sustainable way of activism. Whilst if we can create the same impact or greater impact, the media just wants a picture and you can generate that however way you wish, but the collateral to the activist of the lock-ons and the gluing on is becoming really hard on a lot of people's long-term sustainable emotional and mental health.
Yeah,
so if we can create the same.
Yeah, we want to use the media basically like a megaphone. Like a lot of the time on actions, we've got megaphones and everyone's shouting out and trying to reach the public. But what we're trying to do is reach a huge amount of public by using the media as our megaphone.
It's basically publicity stunts, so photo shoots. So if you view your action, what's the winning shot? Because you've got an editor scrolling through thumbnails of thousands of images going, I'll use that one. So we sort of work on what's that iconic image that we can take, which will allow them to then talk about climate change. So we provide the image, the cap then gets the NGOs and the scientists able to get their message out there, because currently the messages are out there, all the experts know what the problem is, but the media is just as complicit as government is on not telling it, and now that's the demand and supply situation. But so if you can provide something that will give them the demand that, oh yeah, there's a pretty image, it's got fire on it and vomit, wicked. So just play with that.
And there's a lot of journalists as well who actually really do want to get the message out there.
Daily Mail journalists are brilliant. They can't get through the editor.
Yeah, so they want to get the message out there. So by us providing a really strong potent image which has the message there, bang, then they can put something in. So, yeah.
And this intervention is part of a wider series of actions today that is demanding that we join the dots between the fossil fuels environmental destruction and those that are propping up this toxic system that has really got to come to an end. It's just desperate watching the outcomes of COP27, and I don't know if you can give some hope to those that are watching to keep going and keep fighting, that it's worth to keep fighting for.
There's, the fossil fuel age is dying. It's the end. That's what they're basically doing. It's rats from a sinking ship trying to get as much as they can out. They know the writing's on the wall legislatively and economically and environmentally. They're fucked. They're just trying to get as much money in so they're not stuck with stranded assets as possible before it ends. So that if we can push a day off that, if our lifetime's work results in that inexorable end of the fossil fuel era coming half a day, an hour, a minute earlier, then it's worthwhile. But it's not like we're winning. It's we can see society's dying. So like we just speed up that steer slightly.
Yeah, but small wins.
Yeah, okay, well, this is part of the Cut the Ties action. Let's get to the next action that is communicating this. We have got to cut the ties to fossil fuels.
Okay, we're at 60 Great Tower Street here, and you've moved over to a Money Rebellion action, collaborating today with the campaign Stop ECOP. So 60 Great Tower Street is the headquarters of Arch Insurance, and you might think, what on earth does insurance have to do with climate change? There is a link, I can assure you, and we'll talk to some people in a minute to find out a bit more about the link between insurers, finance, and the big fossil fuel projects which are wrecking the planet and continue to create huge amounts of carbon dioxide and related emissions. Well, we've just had COP27, which has been really overrun by fossil fuel lobbyists and the fossil fuel producing countries, which have made it so that the UN representatives have said that 1.5 degrees, that limit to warming, which means that we might actually have a 50% chance of having a livable planet. 1.5 degrees is on life support, which is we've heard this so many times recently, and you would think that COP27 would have been a place to renew people's feeling of urgency, but that doesn't seem to have happened, just like at COP26 last year. So we're coming out here on the streets, various Extinction Rebellion groups here today, to show that people power means something, and we're going to hopefully press from different angles to make some action. So I want to talk to some people about ECOP. ECOP stands for East African Crude Oil Pipeline, and Money Rebellion has been focusing on this for quite some time. It's going to be the biggest, I should say the longest pipeline in the world, a heated pipeline in fact, which is heated by solar power. How incredibly ironic. So a crude oil pipeline in East Africa going from Lake Albert in Uganda to Tanzania is going to be 1,500 kilometers long, and it's going to have a host of really bad impacts if it's allowed to go ahead. So I wanted to come over here to a representative of the campaign Stop ECOP. Hello there.
Hi.
So we've got an action here today with, I should say, biodegradable fake oil to show some of the complicity of this company, Arch Insurance, in making the climate crisis a lot worse. Would you be able to, if I can get my microphone towards you, would you be able to tell us a little bit about the ECOP, Stop ECOP campaign and what you're doing here today?
So the ECOP, very easy, it's an East African crude oil pipeline. It's the longest ever built oil pipeline going from Uganda to Tanzania. And it's very bad for the people in Uganda. It's going to displace 118,000 people there. Also, it's going to go through the Lake Victoria, and 40 million people rely on this lake for the fresh water. And all the experts say that it's going to be spilled, obviously, because it's a very risky project. So what we are doing here in London is we're asking 6 insurance companies inside Lloyd's of London to refuse the ECOP, and Arch is one of them. They haven't declined yet, and they haven't accepted yet either, so they're not complicit in this project yet, but we really want them to refuse, because Total, which is the French company doing this project in Africa, they didn't find any insurance, because all the insurance in Europe have already refused. So they went to Lloyd's of London to find insurance, and we have already convinced 5 insurance inside Lloyd's to refuse, and we have 6 more to convince.
So for people who are listening who find that a little bit confusing, because there's companies inside Lloyd's, so it's like a conglomerate working together here, and they all have individual decisions they can make about what they support?
Okay, so Lloyd's of London, so we're talking about the insurance, not the bank. Lloyd's, the bank, is something else. Lloyd's of London is a markets insurance. So it means that Lloyd's of London is a big entity, and inside this entity there are many insurance companies that make their decision independently from each other. So there are, I don't know, 100 companies, I don't really know, and each company make their own decision. So Lloyd's of London is an insurance market.
Okay, that makes things a little bit clearer. Okay. And thank you. And could you mention some of so there's going to be so many bad impacts of ECOP throughout the Eastern African region. Would you be able to outline some of the worst? Because I know that there's climate, there's nature, and people all implicated in building something this huge.
Yeah. So first, the most obvious one, obviously, is the climate. It's going to emit 34 million tons of carbon emissions each year, which, to just give you an idea, it's like 50 times the global emissions from Uganda and Tanzania together. So every year it's going to meet that. So it's a climate bomb. Then it's for biodiversity, because the pipeline is going through precious biodiversity, natural parks. So it's very bad for that. And finally, for the people, it's quite the worst impact, because even the European Parliament has condemned the project, and it's historical. The European Parliament has never done a resolution against one special company, and it's the first time they do that, so it means it's very, very bad. And they've done a resolution to condemn the project for the human rights violations. It's very, very heavy, because the people there, first they've been displaced from their lands. I told you already, but 118,000 people have been displaced from their lands. But then they've been protesting, because obviously they don't want this project. And for that, for peacefully protesting, they have been put in prisons, they have received death threats. There's this guy who went to France to do a trial against Total, because obviously that's not legal to displace someone from their home and not giving them compensation. He's on a trial. He came back to Uganda, and they've told them that if he wins his trial, they're gonna kill him. So the death threats there are very, very terrible. Uganda is an authoritative state, and so that's for the human rights violations. And I told you about the freshwater reserve that can be ruined, so 40 million people don't have water anymore.
That's great. Thank you so much for sort of giving some of the background to show this is so much climate justice issue as well, and we're trying to support people on the frontline communities to get justice and to hopefully win loss and damages from the more developed nations. Thank you so much for talking to us. I'm just going to try and get a wide angle shot just to show you what's going on here. So just to remind you before we move on, this is Arch Insurance, number 60 Great Tower Street, where Money Rebellion are demonstrating to try and ensure that this, one of several insurers within the Lloyd's of London Insurance Group, do not fund ECOP, the East African crude oil pipeline, which, as we've just heard from one of their representatives, is a really shockingly destructive project in so many ways. I'm going to hand on to another location now. Hopefully we can come back and speak to some of our people from Money Rebellion in just a short while.
Hi there, you join us again outside Inios H quarters in London's Knightsbridge, where Plastic Rebellion protesters are outside their offices, and we're going to speak to Carolyn from Plastics Rebellion here. Carolyn, can I ask you just to step in? And yeah, can you talk to us about what's going on here today? What do Inios do? And why are the activists here today?
Yes, it's all about plastic. Inios are probably the greatest manufacturer of plastics, petrochemicals in the world, greatest friends of fossil fuel industries, really. For us, it's really important people are aware of what Inios are doing. They've really been going under the radar. As you can see, there's no sign outside the door telling us that it's the headquarters of Inios. And they do sponsor sports. Now they're trying to greenwash in a way that, you know, we need to protest and we need to tell people about. So don't wear a football shirt with Inios on it, or a rugby shirt, as I've discovered the All Blacks are now sponsored by them. Just know that you are then supporting people who are causing a lot of harm. We know plastic is poisonous. Plastic is everywhere now, and it's everywhere. It's in our blood, it's in our lungs, it's in our babies' bodies, as we've just discovered. We can't have this anymore. We have to stop producing plastic. We need to invest in recycling what we've produced so far. And someone was asking me, what would you advise, for them to do? I would say, please invest in something that's nurturing for the world tomorrow. Invest in organic farming, in something that's going to be producing goodness, but not producing harmful substances like this. I've been talking to Inios people. The building was evacuated, and we've been leafleting and talking to them. And it's been heart-wrenching, really, trying to really have conversation with people who are being part of doing harm and not really, some of them being aware of it. This is what has been really heartbreaking for me today. But we need to tell people, ordinary people, to come and protest with us, to be with us and say no more plastics, no more fossil fuels. If we support plastics, we support fossil fuels. We need to stop somewhere. And I just want to breathe clean air. I just want to be able to have healthy children and grandchildren. That's why I'm here.
Cool. Carolyn, I think we're going to go elsewhere now. Thank you so much for speaking to us. Really appreciate that.
When I say Schlumberger, you say out! Schlumberger! 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 When I say Schlumberger, you say out! Schlumberger! 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 What do we want? When do we want it? What do we want? When do we want it? When I say Schlumberger, you say out! Schlumberger! Schlumberger! When I say Schlumberger, you say out! Schlumberger! 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 What do we want? When do we want it? What do we want? When do we want it?
Hey everybody, we're back here at the BP offices. It looks like the police have arrived on the scene. They're pretty calm. Everything's calm. Extinction Rebellion is a non-violent protest organisation standing up for the future of the planet, for the future of all living things on this earth. Here today, this action is called Cut the Ties. This is about cutting the ties with the fossil fuel industry. It's time for people to step up and walk away from these industries. History is not going to look kindly on organisations and people who are associated with companies like BP, who are destroying our future, destroying our planet, and they know what's going on. And that makes them complicit. They will be held responsible. I believe they will be accountable in time. But here today, we've got some brave rebels who've taken action. Interesting to maybe chat to a couple of them and see what's going on. So I see you on the corner. We've got some really fetching, so BP, obviously, British Petroleum, but big profits before planet and before people. So we've got some real nice banners, kind of looking at that Shell logo drenched in oil. But I just wondered if you would say, you know, obviously we're standing out here. It's not a nice day. What brings you here? What makes you do something like this? Out of all the things you could have been doing on this Monday morning, what makes you be here?
Yeah, so personally, I'm terrified of the climate crisis and the ecological crisis and what will happen if we don't do it. It's UK, we don't produce enough food to feed ourselves. We import it from other countries, and as the climate's heating up, we're losing crop yield, we're getting less food, and that's happening all over the world. And kind of starvation and kind of mass famine is quite a feasible thing that could happen if we don't act seriously. So I'm terrified for human life, my own life, life on Earth in general, and I don't see any other option. I've been doing loads of things before XR. I've been kind of like doing lots of personal changes in my own life, trying to talk to people about climate change, get people to care, and it's not working. We're still heading increasing emissions globally and kind of steamrolling towards kind of mass climate crisis. So I'm terrified, and this kind of thing historically has worked.
Yeah, and that's the thing, isn't it? You know, I suppose I talk about protests. Things like this are a form of communication. So when communication has failed and we haven't managed to get, you know, the words haven't managed to get through to the halls of power, somehow the halls of power haven't managed to rein companies like BP in, we're left with little choice. And do you feel nervous? Did you feel like stressed and worried about doing anything like this? Because, you know, this is not necessarily in people's comfort zone, right?
No, it's not. So the police are here. They're being fairly calm at the moment, but I've been at other protests where they have been kind of a lot more aggy and in your face and arresting people. And I don't want to get arrested. I'm much rather be kind of at home playing games or doing kind of learning and things and that kind of stuff. So having the police in here potentially going to arrest us, I think that personally I've just been holding this banner, so I'm not planning on getting arrested myself, but other people who sprayed the building down, technically that's an act of vandalism. They could get arrested, and I don't know what will happen to them if they do.
Yeah, oh, well, thank you very much. And it's really interesting you're talking about this. You know, so this is, you know, people might consider that what's happened here is a crime. And I believe, and I'm sure that the rebels here were prepared to be held accountable for this. But then we've got to ask ourselves, how and who are these companies going to be held accountable? How are they going to be held accountable for the crime, which is hardly even, it's so big, it's hardly possible to explain. It's a crime of knowingly destroying our one and only home in the whole of the known universe. This is the only place that humans and all the life that we have on this earth can survive. And these guys are killing it. They know their products are killing it. They know what they're doing is wrong. Yet they're making so much profit from it. Record profits, £7.1 billion in the last quarter. That's double than what they made the similar quarter to the last previous year. So these companies know what they're doing. And who's going to hold them accountable? Our government seems like they're not going to bother. So it's up to ordinary citizens like these people here, like you perhaps watching, to come out and take action. This is stepping up, this is love in action, this is love for the future, this is love for your friends, for your family. This is what we do when we realise that all of this that we're here seeing today has to stop. We have to somehow bring fossil fuels to an end. So this action is called Cut the Ties. I believe there's actions happening all across London today. Companies and organisations involved with legitimising, promoting, supporting, enabling and lobbying for companies like BP. They are being exposed because these companies and organisations cannot operate if people see what they're up to, because no one surely would agree with what they're doing. It makes no sense at all. So exposing these companies, we're asking people to cut those ties, walk away, tell the truth. And I think that's really, really important at this time in history. So I'm asking people in this company here, we're asking people involved in all these fossil fuel industries, and all the companies that enable and collaborate with them. Be responsible, do the right thing. Accountability is on its way, and it's time to step up and cut the ties with fossil fuels. So come and join Extinction Rebellion, and we'll see you soon.
Good morning again. We're back here outside Evershed, Sutherland. Going to switch around so I can talk to you. Hi everyone. So why are we here outside Evershed, Sutherland, you might ask? Well, we're here to cut the ties with fossil fuels, asking these companies that are one step removed maybe. You might think, what are we doing here? Well, Evershed Sutherland is responsible for the insurance and the, sorry, not the insurance, but the legal side of matters when it comes to all things HS2. So Evershed Sutherland, and then switch it around, you are playing a remarkably greenwashed BT in their foyer, which is a bit sickening to watch, are the legal company who pride themselves on their website in creative, cutting-edge legal work. I read that as maybe pushing the envelope a bit when it comes to legal work, creative legal work that is defending HS2, but not only defending HS2, but also bringing prosecutions against peaceful protesters. So Evershed Sutherland, even before the HS2 Enabling Act of 2017, was already being paid £35,000 a week by HS2 to oppose Euston residents who were seeking to find justice for the demolition work that was going on around there, seeking to find justice for the pollution to the aquifer that supplies 22% of London with clean water. Evershed Sutherland were the legal company that defended HS2 in the courts when it came to Affinity Water, who tried to get the courts to recognise that HS2 was going to pollute the chalk aquifer that supplies fresh drinking water to 22% of London. Now, HS2, its connection to the fossil fuel industry is, of course, that it is estimated that it will require 1/3 of the electricity currently needed to supply the whole of our railway network. And how is that electricity going to be provided? Well, given that the government seems hell-bent on not investing sufficiently in renewables, it's going to come from expansion of oil and gas, it's going to come from fracking, it's going to come from nuclear, and not from renewables. HS2, although it's being touted currently by HS2 Limited as a zero carbon project, not even after 120 years will its carbon footprint have been erased. Its carbon footprint will lead to, that comes from demolition, from tearing up land, from construction of the actual track itself. Even after 120 years, HS2's own figures say that there will be 1.49 million tonnes of embedded carbon still accountable for by its construction. Now, also HS2 is responsible for the destruction of ancient woodlands, which of course we need. It is essential that we have ancient woodlands. It's essential that we have forests. It's not on the ancient woodlands. Miles and miles of hedgerow removed, thousands upon thousands of other forests and woodlands and trees lining roads, lining fields are being cut down day after day by the construction required for HS2. And who will it profit? Who will it serve? Well, it's going to profit HS2 Limited, of course, and but who is it going to serve? So very, very few people. For its carbon footprint, for its business case to make any sense at all, for its carbon case to make any sense at all, HS2 requires 446,000 passengers every single day to travel, and that's just between Birmingham and London. And what is farcical about that is more people than currently run the whole, or currently travel upon the whole of our southern network. Okay. I see some brave protesters here who have been here first thing, sitting here calmly. It's all very peaceful here. Got the Samba Band playing. We're going to catch maybe a very quick word with one of these wonderful women. Just have 2 minutes to say why you're here today. Sorry, say that again? Just 2 minutes of why you're here today.
I'm here today because Evershed Sutherland, whose offices we're outside today, are enablers of fossil fuel industry companies such as ExxonMobil, as well as the HS2 project, and they also work on behalf of the Qatari government. All of those organisations, institutions are contributing to climate breakdown, and rather than Evershed supporting climate breakdown, they should be on the side of justice. And yet they facilitate injunctions against peaceful protesters trying to make change for the world to be a better place. So we're here today to call them out as an enabler of the fossil fuel industry and ask them to cut ties and work alongside those that actually need them, rather than the greed and powerful that they're supporting at the moment. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. That was so eloquently spoken. Thank you for your bravery and thank you for being here today.
Okay, so here we are outside 49 Parkinol Green, which houses HEK Strategies, which is Hill and Milton, which is one of the biggest PR companies in the world. They have global reach, they have offices in 80 different countries, and they were in fact the PR of COP27. So why are we here today making a big fuss out of Hill and Milton? It's because not only did they have COP27 as clients, but they also have Exxon, Aramco and Shell. So it's a bit, having them in charge of COP27 is a bit like having Philip Morris in charge of an anti-tobacco campaign. So we're here today because all over the town, Extinction Rebellion will be targeting people who service those industries that facilitate fossil fuels. There's a big reason why we have been talking about climate change for over 30 years and not done anything, and that is because of the PR that has made everybody think that it's all right, it's okay, it's not really happening. And I know that loads of people out there will be thinking, why are they making such a fuss? And the reason we're making such a fuss is because it's beyond urgent. For many people it's already too late. People in Pakistan, people in Africa, a bit of excitement going on there. Thank you! Anyway, it's over.
And a couple of them came in with cameras.
Behind us, the Department for Business, Energy, Investment Strategy are putting together more than 100 new licenses for the exploration and extraction of oil and gas from the North Sea. We cannot afford these new fossil fuels. We cannot afford the money in the investment for their extraction. We cannot afford their burning, and we cannot afford the consequences for ourselves, our planet, and the rest of humanity as this continues. We will not allow this act of renewal of investment and seeking out and burning fossil fuels to proceed unchallenged. This is an intervention. No more new fossil fuel licenses. Cut the ties to fossil fuels now. Cut the ties to fossil fuels. No more new gas and oil licenses.
No more fossil fuels. No more fossil fuels. No more fossil fuels. No more fossil fuels. No more fossil fuels.
It's an intervention.
This is an intervention.
More dramatic things.
It's yeah. Oh, that's the bell going. Okay. Okay. Iggy Fox.
You go for it and I'll do it as well.
You want to pour some?
You can help stick those down a bit better.
So interesting to see all the different actions and how they've been playing out today. We're back at 60 Great Tower Street outside of Arch Insurance, where in the last 10-15 minutes it's been an interesting development where it's been asked by a number of police people to clear up our fake oil, which had been very carefully formulated to be biodegradable and washable considering the rain today, but it's going to be a criminal damage charge against somebody if we're not able to totally clear this pavement. So I was just coming to a rebel who's been watching it all. Hi there. Hello. Would you be able to tell us a bit about
I'm part of the plastic industry.
You're part of the plastics industry?
Yeah.
How's it going?
It's been alright. It's been.
What do you make? What's your product?
We make plastic products.
Which product?
Like luggage.
Luggage?
Yeah.
High end or cheap?
Cheap, yeah. You see the plumber?
The Department for Business, Energy, Investment Strategy are putting together more than 100 new licenses for the exploration and extraction of oil and gas from the North Sea. We cannot afford these new fossil fuels. We cannot afford the money in the investment for their extraction. We cannot afford their burning, and we cannot afford the consequences for ourselves, our planet, and the rest of humanity as this continues. We will not allow this act of renewal of investment and seeking out and burning fossil fuels to proceed unchallenged. This is an intervention.
Okay, I think we just had a bit of a crash there from 60 Great Tower Street at Arch Insurance. So we're back just to showing you what's happening with scraping all the fake oil off the pavement, which we've been told to do. Apparently, the activists here have committed criminal damage. So a rebel who's been watching it all, can you tell me your reaction to the police response this morning?
Well, it's kind of crazy in the light of the difference between a little tiny oil spill of fake oil on a pavement outside an insurance company compared to what might happen once ECOP is built. If you can imagine the amount of devastation if there's an oil spill from this, 1,500-mile pipeline going through people's lands, which would devastate their agriculture, their ability to produce their food. It feels so disproportionate to worry about this tiny amount of biodegradable substance on a pavement in London outside a company. We need to have the precautionary principle, and insurance companies need to start thinking about the future for everyone, for people in Africa and for people in Europe and for people in America and for people in Australia and Asia, because if insurance companies don't stop insuring these devastatingly damaging fossil fuel projects, we will not have a future. I'm a grandparent, there won't be a future for my grandchildren. There won't be a future for anyone's grandchildren anywhere. For future generations, there will be food shortages, famines, floods, fire, all of those things, and we know that. And we know that projects like ECOP, the East African Pipeline, are just going to contribute to endlessly more emissions, more than the planet can survive. So I feel devastatingly sad at the idea that insurance companies don't actually look at risk to humanity and risk to actually all creatures on Earth.
I mean, you're here today because Arch Insurance has actually refused to engage so far in a campaign that Money Rebelling has taken part in, right? And a lot of its co-insurer kind of groups have actually decided to reassess and not sponsor ECOP. Do you get a feeling that there's any engagement going on with company employees today?
I don't know about company employees, but some of the people who work in the building have been really sympathetic and wanted to take leaflets and understood the risk. And it feels like, we are making headway with insurance companies. The fact that so many insurance companies have refused to insure this. And so asking, in whatever way we have to, that Arch will actually stop insuring it, that they will actually take another look and say no. This is not sustainable. This is not sustainable. We've got to now look at the future of having a habitable Earth. And if you're going to insure this, and someone will then build it because it's insured, then it's the end for so many people in Africa. They won't have food. They won't have land. So we want Arch to really take this seriously. We're not, I don't think, being in any way disproportionate with the risk. A small amount of fake oil spilled on the pavement feels a very, very minor inconvenience to a few people who just had to walk around it, basically.
And I have to say, we did have a protesters pushchair here and other things to stop people from slipping on it.
There were precautions taken to stop people slipping on it, and also people were warned. In fact, actually, people did step through it, and it disappeared almost immediately. What is amazing, actually, is that the rebels involved are doing such a fantastic job of clearing it up. I'm looking at someone down there now with another bucket of water, and it's just, the pavement is probably cleaner than when we arrived. So I think, you know, that's a tribute to the way that XR rebels leave things as they were. That, you know, it's like there's leave no trace. Step lightly, leave no trace.
And on a final note, for people who are watching and thinking, this is terrible, what can I do? There's such big forces at work. From a money perspective, what would you tell those people, that the steps that they could take?
First thing is check your bank account. Which bank is it with? If it's with any of the big ones that are still involved in fossil fuels, that would be Barclays, HSBC, Lloyds. Think about changing your account. Move to Triodos, Nationwide, Starling. There's a list, you can find it all online. Which banks do not invest in fossil fuels? That's the first thing. Check about your pension. You know, I'm an older person, so I do understand some of this stuff. If your pension has got anything in fossil fuels, and you can find out from a pension provider, say, I don't want my pension to be in that, I'm going to move it, unless you can actually show me that you are disinvesting. So all pension funds should now be disinvesting in fossil fuel funds.
And there are often ethical options within your own pension provider as well, if you look, aren't there?
Yeah, absolutely. If you look at your pension provider, there might well be an ethical option. And definitely mine, I did check it out, because you know, mine's from a charity I used to work for, and actually it's fine. But for a lot of them, you have to be careful, because sometimes they conceal it. Someone who thought theirs was okay found that actually it was Vanguard, who were pretty bad. Theirs was actually partly a Vanguard investment. There's a lot of greenwashing, so you do need to actually be quite cynical until you've done your proper research and find out. So don't take it at face value until you've really done the research. But you can move your money. I think that's the message. Move your money. Give a message to the investors, give a message to the banks to say, we will not have, you know, the money that we're hoping we'll have an old age for, put in a fossil fuel thing, which will make sure that that not only, you know, that future generations don't have a old age.
Thank you so much. That's rounded off this action really well. I think we've just basically come to an end now. Thank you. So just before we move on, because I think probably actions are still occurring around the capital, we are at 60 Great Tower Street. It's Arch Insurance. This is a money rebellion action, asking insurers and financiers to cut the ties to fossil fuels, and that's a theme that all around London, Extinction Rebellion groups of various colours and with various means have been asking the enablers, basically, of our society. Often the companies that you don't really have enough, they're operating under the radar, but they still have a lot of influence and a lot of power in how we are using energy in our society, often to do with the extraction of fossil fuels and how those enrich certain parts of society, a tiny proportion, of course. And this has been a really interesting action to see that kind of reverse side of what's going on in places in the global south that are being affected by fossil fuel extraction. Right now, ECOP hasn't happened yet. That's the main thing to stress, I suppose, is that this whole campaign is trying to say, let's not even let it start. And as we found out, they've been quite successful at making sure that insurers are aware of how much civil society pressure there is, so that they've actually stepped away from this from the longest fossil fuel pipeline in the world. So fingers crossed it won't actually happen. But I'm just going to say a thank you to everybody taking part in the action today, because all around London it's this kind of direct action that Extinction Rebellion believes will cause the change that we need in the world, because certainly the governments aren't doing anywhere near enough at the moment. So if you're interested, please like and share the live stream. It's been really interesting to see lots of different groups taking part today, all in one go. Maybe there's one or two that you'd like to find out more about, and you can do that on the Extinction Rebellion website. And yes, hope that it's been interesting and informative to you. I'm going to stop here, but I'm sure that there's more to see in other locations, so I'll pass on to them.
I'm here at headquarters. one of our rebels has just been arrested, who was responsible for spraying paint over the front of the building. Schlumberger is the world's premier oilfield services provider, and we're here showing them that they're going to be the first to go as soon as the world realises that there's no more need for fossil fuels. They do all of the research in how to extract fossil fuels from our world, and they're going to be the first people to go when our government finally realises that this is absolutely monstrous behaviour. Our second rebel is just being searched and is most likely going to be arrested now. There is another sister action to this that is happening in Cambridge. You can check that on our socials, which is Extinction Rebellion Youth Cambridge, with a similar thing with a globe going on that is currently in Cambridge at the Senate House right now, if anyone is local to there and wants to go and check it out. But we are working hand in hand together in this, and we can only hope that no arrests have been made at that site, but arrests are being made here at this moment.
That'd be quite rude.
Hello, welcome back to Inios, the headquarters of one of the largest petrochemical companies in the world, headquartered here in the UK. The petrochemical and plastics industry is described as the blind spot in the energy debate, and Inios are responsible for hundreds of thousands of tons of CO2 emissions each year, although they won't actually declare how much they output. They also have no net zero plan. We are here outside their headquarters. We have brave rebels up on the roof. We have people standing outside in the cold and the wet with a sign which says Inios plastic equals death. So I'm going to see if I can find someone that we can talk to from Plastic Rebellion, who's going to talk to us a little bit more about what's going on here today. Janet, step in. Just bear with me here. So we have Janet here from Plastic Rebellion. Can you just tell the live stream what's going on here today, Janet, and like why are you here? What's your message for Inios?
We are in Knightsbridge. We're opposite Harrods, and Inios here have a very under the radar HQ. It's not marked. Everyone now knows this is Inios. They're the UK's largest petrochemical company. They are the plastic tap. They make 60,000 kilograms of PET plastic nurdles per hour. They're set to triple production by 2050, and we're saying that's too much plastic, guys. We've got to drastically reduce this and think about ways of innovating around this catastrophe.
What do you say when you talk to members of the public and they say, look, I'm surrounded by plastic, I can't get away from it? What do you say to people? What can they do?
Yeah, well, we've had people say that. We've also had people saying, has anyone told them that their clothes are made from fossil fuels? Yes, of course, we're all complicit. We live in a fossil fuel civilization. But just because you're living in a sick system doesn't mean that you can't protest against it. I've had a lot of people saying to me, I'm green, I recycle. Of course, it's not that simple. Yes, there's room for a little bit of recycling, but what we really need is an absolutely massive reduction in the production of plastics. And really, when it comes to packaging, innovation around reuse and refilling. And then we need a massive discussion on which other plastics are essential and which are non-essential. And they need to be a part of that.
Great stuff. Thank you very much for talking to the live stream. Appreciate that. So the protest here continues. It's cold, it's wet, but the activists are determined here to make their point. I think we're perhaps going to go to another location now.
Thanks, Brad. Hi everyone, we're back here again outside Everton, Sutherland, in this tiny little back street of London on Wood Lane. Tucked away here, but we're here to bring out into the open day right, Evershed Sutherland, who is the legal company that is responsible for legal work for many fossil fuel industries and also for HS2, which will be reliant upon fossil fuels to generate the electricity that it will need to run it. 1/3 of the one-third of the current amount used by the whole of the rail network will be used to run HS2, the likelihood being that that electricity will be generated by fossil fuels, given that the government are currently committed to 27 billion in highway expansion, 158 billion according to Lord Berkeley on HS2, yet only 12 billion on renewables expansion. So I'm going to chat with a lovely lady here now who has been sitting here in front of Eversheds. I'm going to ask her why she is here today to make this protest outside Evershed Sutherland. Can I have a word with you on the live stream, please? Why are you here today, please?
So I'm outside Eversheds to highlight how they are complicit in enabling companies like Exxon and HS2 to carry on and continue with their destructive projects that are currently underway. So Exxon is building the new pipeline which runs from Southampton all the way up to Heathrow, causing massive devastation at a time when we should be stopping new fossil fuel projects. HS2 has obviously seen huge disruption across the country, and we're now seeing companies like Evershed, who are the law firm that enable these contracts and work for these companies, and now bring injunctions to the court so that peaceful protests cannot go ahead at these sites anymore. So the whole of HS2 and the whole of the Exxon pipeline site is now fully injuncted, which was brought to the courts by this company that are here, and granted by one person, one judge, through money and power, to stop us having any sort of voice. And we're now seeing peaceful protesters imprisoned, not for committing any crime whatsoever, but breaking an injunction. And that is just absolutely disgusting abuse of wealth, power, and that's why I'm here today.
Fantastically put. Thank you very much for that. Yeah, absolutely right. These injunctions are against peaceful protests, although they would claim that not to be the case. Currently, we have a peaceful protester who is in prison for protesting against HS2. That person was a named or is a named defendant, but we also know of at least one person unknown who already has been warned by HS2 lawyers, by Evershed Sutherland, for apparently or allegedly breaching the injunction, although we have irrefutable evidence that that is not the case. That is not the case. Yeah, this peaceful protester, who is a person unknown, has already received a warning. So despite Evershed Sutherland in the legal paperwork that they drew up, and despite their lawyers claiming that these injunctions would not be to prohibit peaceful protest, it would seem that peaceful protesters are being targeted to significantly inhibit to their right to peaceful protest, but also any named defendants would have prosecution brought against them and risk imprisonment, and indeed have been imprisoned. So Evershed Sutherland is just one of the many companies that are in the background, in these little side streets of London, who are facilitating fossil fuel industries and those linked to fossil fuel industry. We heard from that very brave protester who's just been spoken to by the police. It seems like they may be going in to give this person a warning, maybe. Here to raise awareness of how Evershed Sutherland is facilitating HS2, but also Exxon in the pipeline from Southampton inwards. And they brought the injunction to restrict peaceful protest against Exxon and against HS2. So we have the police are here. They've moved in to talk to this peaceful protester. Can't quite pick up what they're saying as the Stamper Band is here in full force. So it seems like these girls, these women, these brave women are about to be searched. Already, the police liaison and a couple of others have been searched. Just going to try and have a word with the police liaison. Do we know what's happening here?
Yes, the police want to search the protesters.
That's what I thought, thank you. Yeah, so as I thought, the police are wanting to search these women.
Right then, so just in case you didn't realise, this huge building up here, all around here, this is BP's offices in London. And BP, as many of you know, is a company that is insisting on extracting every last drop of fossil fuels from our Earth, destroying our planet's ability to support life in the process and threatening the continuation of our civilization. And today we've got a protest going on here. The police are here, you can see. And some people have brought out their banners, and there's been some painting of the walls. But you can see BP stands for British Petroleum. We've also got a sign saying big profits. We've got a sign saying before planet. And there's a sign around here saying before people. And it's really worth kind of being clear. BP have recorded record profits in the most recent quarter, £7.1 billion, at a time when ordinary people are struggling to work out whether they're going to have the heating on this winter, whether they're going to be able to feed their kids. Yeah, it's completely obscene. Yet these companies continue their business and they know what they're doing. So this action today is called Cut the Ties. We're asking people to cut the ties. The employees of companies like BP, the employees of companies and organisations that support BP and other fossil fuel companies. We're asking people to walk away, do the right thing. You've got a moral responsibility. Do you want to find yourself on the wrong side of history? Find yourself where history will be watching you, think that wasn't the right thing to have done. And also part of this action today is all around London, exposing this network of companies and organisations that collaborate and support what's going on, what these companies are doing. And they are going to be held accountable. It's totally uncool. We need that to stop. So right now, our government isn't doing anything to let these companies bring them to account. So it's up to ordinary people to stand up and try to take action. So we're just going to go and have a look along, see if we can talk to somebody. I don't know if we'll have a chance. You got your mouth full, you're going to manage to swallow it. It'll give you a 10-second swallowing time. And then we'll go and have a little chat because, you know, to be honest, it's a bit soggy. It's not the worst day, but everyone here has been here. You know, they're here for a reason. Out of all the things anyone could do on a Monday morning, you know, some people are here. So, yeah, I just thought, yeah, just what brings you here and what makes you feel strong enough to stand out holding this banner and thinking, you know, yeah, I'm getting rained on here.
Exactly. Well, my name is Jonathan, and I'm a climate activist and a politician, and I've done this for several years. You know, I've been involved with Extinction Rebellion, Fridays for Future, and other organizations. So, my main focus is anti-imperialism, anti-colonialism. And if you look at the history of British Petroleum, BP, formerly known as the Anglo, what was it now again? Something.
It's all right.
Yeah,
BP for now is good enough for us.
Good. It has a history of overthrowing governments, democratically elected governments, such as that of Mohammad Mossadegh in 1953 in Iran, and it's tied with obviously the exploitation of the planet regarding resources, and climate change is tied with imperialism and the oppression of other nations and countries. So that's what I'm fighting. I'm fighting against Westernism, Western hegemony, and its bullying tendencies against Russia, China, South Africa, Africa in general, South America, Asia. That's what we're fighting, and also everything. All of these issues go hand in hand. That's what intersectionality, is based on. Everything, all issues being in one way or another tied with each other. You cannot properly, adequately fight, for example, sexism without addressing the issue of climate change or racism or militarism or NATO and other imperialist organizations. So that's what we're fighting.
Can I ask you as well? So, today it's really clear, there's other actions. I believe there's action happening at British BAE Systems, which is a defense company. And I saw Antonio Guterres said that renewable energy would be 21st century, the peace treaty of the 21st century, or words to that effect. Because so many wars have been fought for fossil fuels, and even one right now is completely entwined, isn't it?
It is. You're completely correct. So what imperialism entails is the control of one country of another, like one country controlling another one economically. And a lot of people are mistaken. A lot of people are mistaken in the sense that people think that imperialism is based on one country attacking another. That's not correct. If you look at America, what it did with Afghanistan, when it completely unjustly invaded Afghanistan, is it kept Afghani resources in the ground. What did the British do when they went to India? They burnt all the textile mills, they burnt all the looms, and forced Indians to import their textile from the UK. That's imperialism. It's one country, as Vladimir Lenin said, keeping other countries as captive markets, enslaving other countries economically, and having them be dependent on oneself. That's how empires rise. That's how that's happened.
All right, so I'm just going to come. I was getting distracted, and I know there's something going on. It looks like they are making some arrests here today, and I'm sure these rebels are prepared to be held accountable. And I suppose lots of people do talk about, damage to buildings, protests causing disruption, and all the people involved in Extinction Rebellion believe in accountability. But how are we going to hold companies like BP accountable for the crimes that they are committing right now? Surely it is a crime to knowingly destroy the one and only home that we have, the one and only planet that we know that can support life at the level that we've got it right now. So the accountability cuts both ways, yeah? And I think watching these rebels here is very brave. It takes a lot of courage to do things like this, but they are prepared to be held accountable. Yet these guys hide behind their buildings. They do their lobbying behind closed doors, send their delegates to COP27 to kind of water it down and make sure that it fails. So to be honest, BP is just part of this wide network of fossil fuel industry that is sending us off a cliff, sending us to destruction, and that must end. An Extinction Rebellion and peaceful, non-violent, direct action organization, we're doing what the government should be doing. We're trying to expose and bring these companies to account. The government should be looking after us and our future, and they're not. It's up to ordinary people like us to try and make something happen here. And I'm inviting anyone who's watching this, who watches the TV, watches the news, thinks this is awful, we can't do anything about it. I want to challenge you, because I do believe we can do something about it. We can get together, many thousands of us can come together and send a message to the government. We will not let our planet, our future be destroyed by companies like BP and go quietly about it. We are going to be peacefully protesting until we get things to turn around towards a happier, safer, fairer future for us all. So join Extinction Rebellion. I want to say thank you for watching me. I don't know if I'm going to get back on again, but it was really great. And you want to just say thank you to these brave rebels, because they've been amazingly. And it has been a soggy morning, but an important message being sent. Thanks a lot, and see you for now.
Hi everyone, so we're here to urge Irish Insurance to refuse to insure the ECOP, the East African Crude Oil Pipeline. So it's an oil pipeline that's going to go from Uganda to Tanzania. It's just a terrible project for the planet, but also for Ugandan people. So this project is a project of Total, a French company, which is our French Shell. It is an oil company. This pipeline is super long. It's 1,500 kilometers long. So the distance between London and Rome is just huge. So why is it so dangerous for Ugandan people? First, because it's going to be heated at 50 degrees all day. It's super dangerous. So the risk of spills are very, very high. And it's going through Lake Victoria, which is the largest freshwater reserve in Africa, in whole Africa, even in the second freshwater reserve in the world. And 40 million people rely on for the water. So the risk spills are super dangerous for those people. This project will also displace 118,000 people. They're just going to be displaced from their land without compensation, and we cannot accept that. And it's so bad for these people that even the European Parliament has condemned the project for the human rights violation. It's very bad. Ugandan people have been protesting against this project, and they have been put in prison, they have been put in jail. They have received a lot of death threats. It's really a human rights violation, it's really not nothing. And finally, it's a worse project for the planet. It's a climate bomb. It's going to emit 25 times the global emissions of Uganda and Tanzania every year. So we have to stop this. Thank you so much for coming. And I really demand for you to stop this project. In London, at Lloyd's of London, there have been already 5 insurance companies that have refused to insure this project. So we have to convince 6 more. And 18 in total in Europe and in the world have already refused to insure this project. So Arch, we know you can refuse as well. You have like nothing to gain except just putting yourself in a place that you just do human rights violation with this project. So Arch, we really demand you to stop this project. Thank you.
Help stick those down a bit, Dancer.
Writers rebel for Extinction Rebellion. Cut the ties with fossil fuels. We're taking this action today at the Institute for Economic Affairs. Over 200 years ago, William Blake, the poet who wrote Jerusalem, put down these words: "What is the price of experience? Do men buy it for a song or wisdom for a dance in the street?"
No, it is bought at the price of all a man hath, his house, his wife, his children.
Wisdom is sold in the desolate market, where none come to buy, and in the withered field, where the farmer ploughs for bread in vain.
It is an easy thing to triumph in the summer sun and in the vintage, and to sing on the wagon loaded with corn.
It is an easy thing to talk of patience to the afflicted, to speak the laws of prudence to the houseless wanderer, to listen to the hungry raven's cry in the wintry season when the red blood is warm and filled with the marrow of lambs.
It is an easy thing to laugh at the wrathful elements, to hear the dog howl at the wintry door and the ox in the slaughterhouse moan, to see a God on every wind and a blessing on every blast, to hear the sounds of love in the thunderstorm that destroys our enemy's house, to rejoice in the blight that covers his field and the sickness that cuts off his children, while our olive and vine sing and laugh round our door and our children bring fruit and flowers.
Then the groan and the dollar are quite forgotten, and the slave grinding at the mill, and the captive in chains, and the poor in the prison, and the shattered bone hath lain him, groaning among the happier dead.
It is an easy thing to rejoice in the tents of prosperity.
Thus could we sing and thus rejoice, but it is not so with us. Writers rebel for Extinction Rebellion at the Institute of Economic Affairs. Cut the ties with fossil fuels.
Cut the ties with fossil fuels.
Cut the ties with fossil fuels indeed.
Can you do that again quickly,
Yeah. Sorry, just taking a breath.
Put the volume up, volume up. Okay.
Speak up as loud as you can. Okay. I'm here today to say a few words about why I'm here today. I'm here today because I'm a mother and I'm a grandmother. And my concerns are for the children, the grandchildren. I'm very aware of the words said, I think perhaps by Indigenous people, that we do not inherit the planet from our ancestors, we borrow it from our children. And the damage that you have heard about that the companies like this and the fossil fuel are doing is that they are killing, murdering the future of our children. And they have done nothing. And we have to do everything we can to save what we can for them. Thank you.
Okay, so here we are outside Hill and Knowlton Strategies, and actually we're on the other side of the glass. We've got two brave rebels who are glued on, and they're glued on to make a protest because this is the PR agency that did the PR for COP27. And something that I'd just like to point out is, as well as doing COP27, they are also the PR agency for Exxon, Aramco and Shell. Now, this year's COP had a record number of oil execs attending related to various countries. In fact, they had 636 oil employees here. So we're just seeing a bit of action here with the people who are glued on and saying cut the ties to fossil fuels. So we are asking H&K to just stop it, please. Just stop facilitating this global warming problem. It is beyond urgent, right? We've known about this for 30 years. Why have we done nothing? Because of industries like PR that are servicing the fossil fuels and making everybody think it's not as urgent as it is so that they can make a bit more money. And on the theme of greed, because greed is really the issue here, it's all about making a bigger buck. It's all like David Beckham taking 10 million to go to Qatar, and these guys are taking money just to make the oil industry be able to make a bit more money. And all of that money they're making, they're not investing in our future at all. They're just trousering it. And so that is why we have to point this out, and we have to help people join the dots between how this PR agency is helping prolong business as usual and making it seem like it's not an urgent issue. And if you're thinking, well, it can't be that urgent, can it? Otherwise everybody be shouting up and down in the streets. Hello, we're here, we're shouting up and down in the streets, yeah? Because it is that bad. And you don't have to believe Extinction Rebellion, you can just listen to the UN Secretary General, Antonio Guterres. He'll tell you how bad it is. He says that we are on a highway to climate hell. And I think he chose that specifically with ACDC in mind, might I add. But this is where we are. You don't have to listen to activists. You can listen to the science. You can read the IPCC reports, or there are some lovely infogram versions of those. But we are way beyond the last chance to learn. And
anything you'd like to say, madam? Or?
Just that we're here today because
BEIS have issued or are in the process of issuing over 100 new licences for extracting oil and gas, and we're in a climate and ecological emergency. We're already going to be longer than 1.5.
Thank you very much. Just give my office a bit of space. That'd be lovely, thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, so what are you doing here?
So I'm Christelle, I'm a GP. I'm here today outside of JP Morgan's headquarters because JP Morgan are the world's leading fossil fuel financiers. As a bank, they've invested $317 billion since the Paris Agreement in oil, gas and coal projects. Their CEO earns $34 billion a year. As we all know, we're in a climate crisis, we're in a cost of living crisis with energy prices on the rise. It is the wrong thing to do. We are calling on them as a bank that are very influential globally to invest in the right thing, to invest in renewable energy, to invest in projects that are actually going to give us a livable planet. I'm actually glued to a poster of the floods in Pakistan right now. The COP27 negotiations have just been talking about loss and damage suffered by some of the world's poorest countries who have actually contributed least to the climate crisis. I think these guys should pay up. I don't think that they should be earning £34 billion investing in this. And I'm just here because I'm absolutely outraged by it.
No, I've been arrested as I expected to be for what's happened here this morning. I don't regret it, and we'll let justice take its course. But this had to be pointed out that this is just wrong. 100 new fossil fuel licences cannot be right, and it had to take action. And so we'll see what happens as a consequence.
Thank you very much, gentlemen.
Okay.
We're going to be campaigning about shipping fuels today, primarily HFO, heavy fuel oil. This is a waste product of the processing, like the fossil fuel distillation process. You've got like a tower and all the distilled bits come off. At the bottom is left this crap, which is toxic waste, which they can rebrand heavy fuel oil and run ships on it. The emissions are 1,000 times worse than that of a distillate fuel like diesel or any of these that they could perfectly well burn. I mean, the fact that we're such a low bar, could you just burn diesel? Because that at least has had the sulfur taken out. We've got 1,000 times the rate on HFO, and it's also got black particles that are melting the ice caps and adding to the albedo effect. It's just a complete disaster. And the agencies that are supposed to be regulating this are, funnily enough, run by the industries that control shipping. So it's a complete foxes running the henhouse situation, and that's what we're trying to draw attention to. We've only got one UN agency in the UK, and no one knows about it, and they should be the good guys, yet they're the bad guys.
Hi, so can you tell me what you're doing here?
Well, I'm here with Doctors for Extinction Rebellion outside the Victoria Embankment office of JP Morgan Chase, which is the world's biggest investor in fossil fuels. Since the Paris Agreement of 2015, JP Morgan Chase has invested over $317 billion into fossil fuel projects. We're here to ask them to cut the ties with the fossil fuel industry. Doctors for Extinction Rebellion have been carrying out actions at branches of JPM for the last year. There have been quite a few actions. In September 21, that was the first action, and the group handed in a letter to the CEO, Jamie Dimon, which requests that JP Morgan Chase cut the ties with the fossil fuel industry, that they stop investing in new fossil fuel projects, and that they have a genuine plan to reduce emissions. Last summer, here in the UK, we had extreme temperatures of over 40 degrees, and this resulted in wildfires across London. 40 homes were burnt down in London alone, and there were other fires widespread across the country. London Fire Brigade had its busiest day since the Blitz.
Okay, Dorothea,
like to tell us why you're here?
Yes, well, it's very exciting to be gathering here because for an incredibly long time, Eversheds has persecuted us when we're exercising our legitimate right to peaceful protest against High Speed 2. And I was horrified to find that not only did they pay Eversheds £5,000 a day to trash our petitions back in 2015 before Parliament went right ahead and passed the hybrid bill that enabled High Speed 2 to destroy ancient forests, ruin, absolute devastation, a Trafalgar Square-sized area around Euston Station, cutting down our trees when we have a climate emergency and we need every tree and green space we can get. So, you can imagine how horrified I was to find out that ExxonMobil are building a pipeline from Southampton to Heathrow in order to increase the amount of jet fuel they can get there for the third runway. I mean, again, this is an appalling thing to do when we have an impending catastrophe that threatens the lives of all of our grandchildren. And they too are taking injunctions out against people who protest about the pipeline. I can't begin to tell you how good it is to see people gathering here to protest against Evershed Sutherland, who are clearly major evildoers in the gloomy background of fossil fuel giants. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dorothy.
Right, so now you know about ECOP and why it needs to be prevented from happening, I'm going to explain why we are here outside Arch Insurance on the 5th floor. As we speak right now, XR are targeting the enablers across the city in a number of different locations. They're all enablers of the fossil fuel industry. And they're not all the obvious targets like Shell and Barclays. They're all the insurers, the infrastructure builders, and companies like that. What we're doing is we're joining the dots between all organisations involved and demanding they cut their ties with fossil fuels. This action here is being led by Money Rebellion, who target the financiers and insurers of the climate destructive industries. So any fossil fuel project needs finance and they need insurance. 18 insurance companies, including Zurich and AXA, have refused to insure ECOP. And 20 international banks, including the three main French ones, Crédit Agricole, BNP Paribas and SocGen, have also ruled out financing it. They've done the right thing. They've listened to the scientists, the IPCC, the IEA, the Climate Change Committee, who have stated that there must be no more new oil and gas or fossil fuel projects if we are to limit global warming to 1.5 degrees centigrade. But we kind of now all know 1.5 degrees centigrade is not really available. So what we're doing now is we're fighting for every fraction of a degree above that. And we're fed up. We're fed up with all the people here in the city saying, don't worry, leave it to us, the grown-ups. But you, in the city, are the ones that have caused this by knowingly financing and insuring projects that have taken our world into uncharted, runaway climate change. And despite all your ESG box ticking and offsetting your flights, nothing really is changing. Carbon emissions are still going up. And projects like, if projects like ECOP happen, they'll continue to grow even further. The army now, our army, is preparing for 3.5 degrees. The world is suffering from our climate destruction. So who's on our side? Well, we've got the UN on our side. In fact, the Secretary General of the United Nations, Antonio Guterres, recently announced that
We are in a life or death struggle for our own safety today and our survival tomorrow. It's time for a game-changing, quantum-level compromise between developed and emerging economies. Every government, every business, every investor, every institution must step up with concrete climate action for net zero. And he also said we need to end our reliance on fossil fuels and avoid a lock-in of new fossil fuel infrastructure. The moment that Arch ensures this pipeline, it becomes part of the problem, not the solution. Arch's reputation and a great deal more than that is at stake. Thank you.
Hi, why are you here?
I'm here because JP Morgan are the biggest investors in fossil fuel in the world. The Banking on Chaos report has shown them consistently, ever since the Paris Agreement was signed, to be the bank that is investing the most in fossil fuels. And fossil fuels are causing climate change and air pollution. So air pollution is already killing outdoor air pollution is killing over 4 million people globally every year. Climate change is killing more people from heat waves. I mean, even in the UK, over 3,000 people died in the heat wave this summer. And then you look at the floods in Pakistan, the prolonged drought in the Horn of Africa, the wildfires that we've seen around the world. This is devastating people's livelihoods. It's driving 20 million people from their home every year now. So, on top of that, climate change drives more infectious diseases like pandemics that we've all just been through, but also things like malaria, Lyme's disease in the UK, waterborne diseases like cholera, and obviously one of the biggest threats is to our food and water security. In this country we're not food secure, we import 50% of our food, but around the world the problem's much bigger, and it's driving mass migration, which is going to get worse and worse. They're talking about over 1 billion climate refugees by the middle of the century. We have no plan for what we're going to do about that. On top of conflict, I'm not just a doctor, I'm also a mother. I've got 3 children and I'm absolutely terrified of what's happening. And so what we're asking JP Morgan to do is to stop investing in making this situation worse and start investing in the solutions, because we have the solutions. The IEA has made a big report which was published last year which said we don't need more fossil fuels, and they made a roadmap. That's what we want JP Morgan to be investing in, so that's why we're here.
Thank you.
So I'm just going to say a few words about why it's not in the interest of anybody, but even Arch. I'm just going to talk a little bit about the developing momentum behind climate responsibility, and point out some of the reasons why Arch should be put off insuring ECOP or any other climate and ecological disaster. Finally, after 30 years of battling, spearheaded by the small island developing states, supported by the group of 77, which are actually 135 countries now, and the least developed countries, loss and damage is an actual thing. A fund for this has been recognised. Of all the rubbish that 30 years of COP negotiations have put the world through, the disgusting behaviour of the rich world concerning any type of finance has been almost unbearable. First, there is climate finance, 100 billion to, quote, help, unquote, most vulnerable countries adapt to the new and much worse world created by the rich and polluting, and enabled by all the places that XR are stopping at today, including Arch. It's not enough money, it hasn't been paid, and even where it is paid, they've not created new money. They've just moved it around, or they've just done loans instead of grants. It is shameful to belong to this world. But if that is shameful, loss and damage is worse. Loss and damage is the economic loss and damage to livelihoods and property, and non-economic loss
in terms of life and loss to biodiversity and cultural heritage. It includes impacts from extreme weather and also impacts from slow onset, like glaciers. It's hard to calculate the economic impact of tuna shoals migrating, or 90% of Lake Chad drying up. Repeat that across the globe. But suffice it to say that everyone talks about at least $1 trillion in loss and damage by 2050. And the more they pollute, the more it'll cost. So our minds inevitably turn then to who pays. And that's why the rich world erased loss and damage in Glasgow, and why it wasn't even on the agenda for COP27. But did that stop the small island states, the G77, the least developed countries, and the entire activist world at Egypt? Despite 600 representatives of the fossil fuel industry, despite the rich world's antagonism, money and corruption, David won a small victory against Goliath. A fund apparently will be set up. We can only imagine now the conversations in governments and places like Arch and insurance and banking throughout the world. We are sure that the activist world, like XR, will not stay quiet on this matter, and hopefully soon the concept of loss and damage will be embedded in people's consciousness. After all, the fossil fuel industry is already hated, especially now, and the governments of the rich world will struggle to get elected if they have to tax their citizens to pay for loss and damage. I'm sure their minds, like ours, and commentators already, will turn to corporate finance. And considering that the fossil fuel industry has made an average of $3 billion of profit per day for the last 50 years, that would make sense. And so it would not seem any longer a safe option to insure such a ludicrous and bizarre idea as ECOP. Not only a carbon bomb, but more or less definite local polluter on a devastating scale. So just to highlight that it's time for Arch and other such enablers to think more carefully about the risks that they too are taking by insuring ventures that are no longer insurable.
We're here outside the Institute for Economic Affairs with Writers Rebel on behalf of Extinction Rebellion. We're here as part of the Cut the Ties campaign, and what we're doing here today is making the invisible visible through direct action. The Institute for Economic Affairs frames itself as a charitable foundation, but for many, many decades now they've been at the forefront of lobbying against meaningful action in regards to environment and climate, as well as a lot of other matters. They are part of a nexus of dark-funded lobbyists who, on behalf of companies like ExxonMobil, who obviously have been funding climate denial for many, many decades now, and BP, have been basically fronting a cash for access deal within regards to politics and the fossil fuel industry. We believe most deeply that if people like William Blake were here and alive today, they would be horrified at the state of the planet, horrified at all that they hold dear being flushed into the gutters for money. And in my opinion, places like the Institute for Economic Affairs, they're like the dark satanic mills of the oil industry. This innocuous building at the heart of Westminster is pretty faceless, and yet its influence is vast and global. They've been taking money from ExxonMobil since 1967. They have the ears of ministers and powerhouses alike, and indeed also involved in media manipulation as well. So we're just here to make sure that what's in the dark comes to light, and to ask people like the Institute for Economic Affairs to cut the ties that they have so very strongly woven together, and to give the future a chance.
My name's Toby Litt. I'm part of Writers Rebel, part of Extinction Rebellion, and we've taken action today against the Institute of Economic Affairs because we want to cut the ties between fossil fuels and our government. We want to stop the kind of insidious whispering that goes on from lobby groups and from fake charities that go to the highest level of our government and tell them that business as usual is okay, and that they can keep going with things like new licenses for gas and oil. So we've taken this action on the basis of a very simple idea. If you took someone from the past, if you took William Blake or a writer like that, and you dropped them right now, what would they think? What would they say? What would they want us to do? I think they'd be extremely, extremely horrified. I think they'd be scared. I think they'd lose it altogether. And then they would ask, well, what are you doing? So this is what we're doing. We're taking this action to cut the ties with fossil fuels. Writers Rebel, Extinction Rebellion.
My name is Hayley Pinto. I'm a doctor. I'm protesting outside JP Morgan because they're the biggest investor in fossil fuels, which are causing climate change and air pollution. This is not a future problem. It's already started. Outdoor air pollution kills over 4 million people every year. Even in the UK, over 3,000 people died in the heatwave this year. Climate change increases the risk of infectious diseases like pandemics, mosquito and tick-borne diseases like malaria, and waterborne diseases like cholera. Wildfires, storms, floods like those recently seen in Pakistan and last year in Europe, prolonged droughts like the one currently occurring in the Horn of Africa, are killing many more people, devastating livelihoods and driving 20 million people from their homes every year. Children, the elderly, people of colour and those on low income are worst affected everywhere. They're most exposed to risk and they have the least resources to cope or to rebuild after damage occurs, but have contributed least to this problem. These events also threaten our water supplies and ability to grow enough food. As the world continues to heat, all these problems will get much, much worse, driving conflict and the migration of billions of people as their homelands become uninhabitable. I'm not only a doctor, I'm also a mother, and I am terrified of what the future holds for my children. JP Morgan is investing in suffering and death on a biblical scale for short-term profit. This is morally bankrupt. They say we need new fossil fuel infrastructure. We don't. If we are to survive, we need that investment to be going into accelerating solutions, not making the problem worse. We've been asking JP Morgan to change their investment strategy and cut ties to fossil fuels since September 21. We've yet to receive a satisfactory response, and that's why we're back and why we'll keep coming back.
We're doing an action today at the International Maritime Organisation as part of a wider series of actions that are going on across London, targeting different stakeholders and people in the fossil fuel industry. So the International Maritime Organisation uses heavy fuel oils and has a lot of people who are within the International Maritime Organisation who are fossil fuel lobbyists and stakeholders within the industry. And we're saying that the fossil fuel industry has no place in the International Maritime Organisation. They shouldn't be in there making decisions. And we would like there to be a link between the fossil fuel industry, between all the different players in this. So that's why we're joining this wider action and being part of it.
So we're outside the
the Department of Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy. Would you like to say what's happened here today and what's happening? I think some of the protests have been searched, aren't they?
We are protesting against the fact that the Department of Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy, which is funds fossil fuel licences, has issues fossil fuel licences, has agreed to issue more licences, which is in absolute breach of the Paris Agreement and our commitment to decarbonise. These will take us soaring well above the 1.5. These are all come out and they start bringing us oil out of the ground. It will take us well over the 1.5, which is already 1.5 is too much global warming. This will just make it massively worse. We are here today to draw attention to that and just to try to secure our future for our children. And the government is breaking its own agreement. This is a government department. It has committed to keep below 1.5, and it is now everything it's doing is in absolute contradiction with that plan. They appear to be searching and now arresting peaceful protesters, which is.
Do you know what they're being arrested for?
I think it's to do with conspiracy. Well, no, you'll have to ask. But the person here is just from being near other people who they think doing criminal things. So
I can see they're being searched, but have they all been arrested? Do you know? Are they?
I don't think everyone's being arrested. We're just waiting to hear who's being arrested and who isn't. They're checking the CCTV, but it seems to be a bit arbitrary who's being arrested and who isn't. So we're just waiting to see what's happening. But we are exercising our right to peaceful protest under the Section 6 of the Human Rights Act. We are not doing anything we shouldn't be doing. So.
That's something, as it was quite obvious, that most people here were just passing out leaflets and holding banners, but I don't know if this is a new plan of the Metropolitan Police. They arrest everyone or they're searching everyone. Apparently they're checking the CCTV, so we'll have to wait and see what happens.
To the manager of the bank. And what we're asking is for them to invite us to a board meeting, where we can discuss why we're doing what we're doing today, and where we can discuss their net zero ambitions, which we don't think are good enough. This is something that we'd like to talk to the manager about today, if they're willing to come out. We are willing to unclue ourselves if we do get invited to the board meeting to discuss our concerns. Otherwise we will keep coming back again and again, as Doctors for XR already have, until JP Morgan actually start listening. We've got an executive summary there of the Banking on Climate Chaos report that was done by the Rainforest Alliance, where JP Morgan ranks top in the league table of fossil fuel financiers, so that's why we've chosen them.
Thank you. Hello everyone, here we are outside Ontario Teachers Pension Fund, and we're just going to hear from one of the rebels that's decided to take action today. Hello there, can you tell us why you've decided to come and take action today?
Oh, hi, yes. I've decided to take action today because I'm the mother of an 18-year-old adult now, and I don't know what world I brought her into, where the government is acting in favour of all the companies that are propping up the fossil fuel industry, which we're trying to draw attention to today. These companies are what drives expansion and what keeps the fossil fuel economy alive. This particular company right here is an investment company, the profits of which go to the teachers of Canada, who deserve their profits. However, what this company does is aggressively drive expansion of airport infrastructure against the will of A, local citizens, B, it's acting against the world's population by the emissions it's going to create in pursuit of these profits, and C, the teachers of Ontario who actually receive the benefits of this don't want their money to be invested in this. They've spent their entire career teaching children, and yet their pension, they have to live with the knowledge that their pension comes from profiting from car parks by expanding airport infrastructure.
Thank you. So I understand they're one of the biggest private airport investors in Europe, and yet no one's really heard of them. So what is it, why are these companies so elusive, and what's the message to people watching this, that the government are essentially propping up these companies that are essentially involved in the web of lies?
I'm not really sure it's elusive. It's it conducts its business in plain sight and is supported by our own government planning laws. Now, this company owns £250 billion of assets globally, which it pushes aggressively to expand. And in airports, it actually received government bailouts and furlough money despite having a fire and rehire tactic, which enabled it to actually make a profit, a record profit of 5.5 billion from other people's misery in 2021 alone.
And I understand that was when they were still taking furlough money and supporting fire and rehire policies within the aviation industry, right?
That's correct. And this is what governments and systems worldwide are. This is the structure of the system that we're supporting here by our current regulations and laws. So we're actually putting the profits and interests of this company above the health of any global citizens, especially the ones that are protesting about it in their own location.
Great, and I saw an interview from one of the teachers in Ontario that is a member of this pension fund. They have no idea that their pensions have been invested in airport expansion. She was devastated to hear that it was against the will of the people, and you know, there's absolutely no transparency.
Exactly right. As I say, this pension fund is for the profit of the teachers of Ontario, and when they found out what their money was invested in, they were devastated that they'd spent their whole career teaching children who are going to be adults, bringing them into this world where we can't actually have any imperative to change, despite being on the precipice of disaster. We've got no clear pathway, no government policy to reach. To even keep warming within our Paris climate limit of 1.5 degrees C. There's absolutely no direction from government, and the Lords have lately said it's all going to have to come from citizens and behaviour change, because actually there's no direction from government on this, and there's no regulation on companies that profit in this way.
Great, thank you very much. Well, thanks for taking action today. Well, there you go, you heard it. The message is cut the ties. There's many of these companies that are either operating via think tanks and lobbying our government, or just behind the scenes and no one knows of them. They have a different name for their company, where they own the airports. I believe they're involved in Bristol, Birmingham, London City, among others in the UK and around Europe, Copenhagen and many more. So yeah, please do spread the message and make sure that we cut the ties.
So what's this photo that's on the glass there?
So at the top we've got a picture of the quite famous protest last month by Just Stop Oil, where a Van Gogh painting was covered in tomato soup behind glass, and we're just contrasting the outrage that received with the lack of outrage that the public has about a third of Pakistan being underwater. We're just sort of asking the question, what is vandalism? Is it gluing your hand to a window, or is it deliberately keeping your foot on the accelerator when you know you're about to drive the whole planet off a cliff? And that's what we think this bank is doing. So, you know, we're just wanting to make people think about what is vandalism, and I suggest that activities, financing activities that will put vulnerable people underwater is vandalism.
Madam, would you like to introduce yourself and tell us how you came to be here today?
My name's Louisa. I believe strongly that something needs to be done urgently to prevent real destruction of our environment, and nothing very much seems to be happening. The Department of Business and Energy are issuing more licenses for people to extract fossil fuels, which won't come online for a long time, so it should be completely pointless, and we need to stop.
And so we're here, it's cut the ties, and we want the Department of Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy to cut their ties with fossil fuels. So how are they still involved with fossil fuels even now?
They are issuing licenses for new extraction of fossil fuels, which will continue to destroy our environment over the next 10, 20 years. So it doesn't make sense.
So, would you like to tell us a bit about the protest today, about what happened? And there was some fire extinguishers set off, wasn't there? And then the police seem to be arresting and searching lots of other people as well.
Yes, the police have arrested peaceful protesters. They have searched peaceful protesters. yes, I'm not quite sure exactly how many people they've arrested, but certainly they have arrested some peaceful protesters.
It looks about half of the protesters have been arrested, you think? And normally at an XR protest, there's a couple of heroic souls do the act of civil disobedience, but there's lots of banner holders and leaflet giver-outers, and they've all been arrested as well.
Yes, it would appear so. It seems like it is now a crime to hand out a leaflet. Somehow I thought that was peaceful protesting.
So it's raining now. We've been here about an hour. Half the protesters have been taken away. The two heroic people who did the act of civil disobedience, they're still here. So, have you got a message? It's quite possible someone in the department here will see it. Have you got a message for them?
Yeah, I have a message to everybody who works in the Department for Business, etc., etc., because how can they continue to do what they're doing? It just doesn't make sense. You know, get out there, talk to people, and change people's minds, because it's ridiculous to be issuing licenses for new extraction of fossil fuels when we know we cannot possibly continue to use them and, you know, have a livable planet.
So thank you very much for coming out today and standing in the rain, and well done for being one of the last protesters left. So okay, thank you.
So we're here outside the registered offices of Schlumberger, who've recently rebranded to SLB. Don't worry though, they have been cleared they're not transitioning away from fossil fuels, which is their main business. So Schlumberger are the world's premier oilfield services provider, which means that they work in over 120 countries and they work with all of the biggest fossil fuel companies. So whether that's sort of corporations, nationals, all of these things. One of the worst examples we've seen recently is they claimed to withdraw from Russia when Russia invaded Ukraine, but instead not only are they still there, they're refusing to help out their employees who are trying to escape conscription into the Russian army. This is like the extent of the evil that they do. They're all around the world and they are complicit in working with some of the worst governments, hiding their money, dirty dealings, all of these things. And what they actually do, so what an oil field services provider does, is they do the exploration, so they find new oil and gas. So when we talk about no new oil and gas, these are the guys that are going to have to shut down if we do that, first of all. So it's the exploration, it's the technology. Schlumberger developed fracking technology. Our friends who worked so hard at like Preston North Road and other anti-fracking sites were fighting against Schlumberger, who were on the ground doing all this harm there, and they're doing it all around the world. You know, in Ecuador, they're responsible for a pipeline that's just like spewing oil into the Amazon. And they were there with Shell when Shell first went into the Niger Delta, which obviously ended horribly with like long-lasting pollution and with the execution of Ogoni activists. So they really do have this long history of just being on these sites of destruction around the world. When the ocean was on fire, they were there. So we're here to say, firstly, to highlight the connections between Schlumberger and every other kind of abusive, destructive industry, but also to say there is no future for Schlumberger in a livable planet.
When I say Schlumberger, you say out! Schlumberger! Out! Schlumberger! Out! Schlumberger! Out! Schlumberger! Out! When I say Schlumberger, you say out! Schlumberger! Out! Schlumberger! Out! Schlumberger! Out!
London during the 40-degree heat wave in the summer, when over 40 homes burnt down in London alone. And this poster invites the viewer to consider whether throwing some tomato soup onto a painting, which is then wiped off without damaging the painting, is vandalism that is worse than the people who are responsible for increasing fossil fuel emissions, whose actions contribute to heat waves, which has caused the loss of 40 homes. Which is worse? And in the other picture, which you'll see in a moment, it shows the appalling flooding in Pakistan that occurred this year, in which 1,600 people lost their lives and over 3 million are still displaced and in need of emergency aid. And it asks the viewer to consider whether the loss and damage of a painting, which didn't actually occur, is worse than the loss and damage that was caused to the people of Pakistan.
So behind me is Evershed Sutherland. Evershed Sutherland is one of the biggest legal companies in the world. They actually specialise in property. But in specialising in property, they also specialise in all the companies that are on the wrong side of history. It's oil, that's HS2, that's the nuclear fuel companies, that's life sciences, all backed by these people. All their trading is done through these people, and all their legal attempts to stop protest are done through these people. People are going to prison because of the actions that the people in that office take. People who have not broken a law, who have not committed a crime, are going to prison because of those people over there. Biggest thing that we can do, all of us, is stand up and be a part of the protest. This is anti-democracy. That is anti-democracy. Down here, that is democracy. That is real democracy. That is people speaking truthfully and honestly from the heart. Come out and join us. It's the biggest piece of power mongering that you will ever have. Please come out and join us. Thank you.
Right. Madam, would you like to introduce yourself and tell us what's been going on? You've had a quick chat now, and you're quite concerned about how the police are working.
Yes, I'm a bit concerned about how the police are working. They seem to be overreaching their powers, arresting somebody here for simply giving out leaflets on the street, and they've got CCTV, so presumably they know that that's all that she was doing, and she's not committed any criminal offences at all, but she's in their van and being taken away.
And did you say there's sort of case law that says you shouldn't really be arrested for doing something like that? Or?
Well, the Home Secretary referred the case, the Colston verdict, to the Court of Appeal for an opinion, and part of that opinion was that the CPS should not be referring, things like chalk spray cases for prosecution, because there's clearly no real damage in those cases at all. I mean, it's just washable paint that comes off very easily and causes no damage whatsoever. So it's difficult to see why the police would take so much interest in minor incidents of that sort, and in people who are simply handing out leaflets.
There's two journalists here. There's a photojournalist and someone from the Press Association, and they've got me as the XR live stream who stood right at the edge, pinned to the side, but they won't even let the proper journalists in with press cards, and it's very strange, isn't it?
It is very strange, and it ties in, I think, with what one of the chief constables said on mainstream media the other day, that the press should consider what news they're covering, and I think that's a very dangerous statement for the policeman to make.
So what's happening here? There's a lady being led away. I think she's been arrested.
It looks as if she's been arrested for some reason, yes.
And she was just one of the sort of banner holders, wasn't she?
As far as I'm aware, yes. I'm not quite sure what her role was, but I certainly didn't see her doing anything, even vaguely antisocial. So, yeah.
So is it too far to say this is sort of the police are acting in a political way, rather than sort of upholding the law and keeping the peace?
I am sure that they are under immense political pressure to be as difficult as possible at this stage in order to deter other people from doing the same thing, and in the same vein they're deterring journalists from reporting what is an important part of our society, the right to protest and the right to draw the public's attention to various inequities and concerns that they should have.
And this is happening partly because this building is issuing new fossil fuel licences. The climate emergency is getting worse. Where's it going to end?
Well, one does wonder where this is going to end, because clearly if you've got too much carbon emissions in the atmosphere, the last thing you want to do is add even more to them, particularly when that takes us straight through the 1.5 degree centigrade temperature increase, which all the nations resolved to stick to at the Paris Agreement. And it's astonishing that the UK is simply, pouring fuel on an existing fire and making it worse. And one has to say, why is that? Surely one would be trying to reduce the amount of carbon in the atmosphere and not open up any new sources that would cause carbon emissions.
But not only that, as people become more concerned, it's likely there'll be more protests, more protesters, and are the police going to become even more oppressive? Are things going to escalate, or it's a bit concerning, isn't it?
It certainly is concerning, and there certainly will be more protesters as this goes forward, because people will increasingly realise that we are in an absolute catastrophe, and that it is going to affect their lives, even in the UK, very significantly over the next decade. And it's already affecting people in other parts of the world very significantly. We've got tremendous devastation, and much of Pakistan after the recent floods is still underwater, with millions of people displaced. And we just can't stand around having more fossil fuel licenses when that's the source of the catastrophe that is currently hitting those nations and will come here very soon.
Well, thank you very much. You can put your hood up now because it is raining. Okay, thank you.
Can you tell us who you are doing this for? Who you are doing this for? Extinction Rebellion. And we're rejecting the marketing companies telling lies about the state of the climate. They're greenwashing. It's not acceptable.
So if you'd like to come and see what we'll do, is we'll just pop you between my colleague here in that middle seat. You're right, okay, up, one hand. Just like one hand. Just in that middle seat, and if you sit on his left-hand side, in which case I'll just leave you in this seat.
My name is Dr. Catherine Fallon, and I'm a GP. I have come here today as part of the group Doctors for XR to request that JP Morgan Chase Bank cuts its ties to the fossil fuel industry. JP Morgan Chase Bank is the world's biggest investor in fossil fuel companies, having invested over $317 billion since the Paris Agreement of 2015. Doctors for XR have been visiting branches of JPM since September 21, when a letter was handed into the Canary Wharf branch to the CEO, Mr. Jamie Dimon. The letter demands that they make ending expansion of fossil fuels and commitment to genuine emissions reduction a precondition for any business deal. We have invited the branch manager here today to meet with us to discuss our requests. Here in Britain, we've seen unprecedented weather, such as the 40-degree heatwave of last summer, which resulted in 40 homes being burnt down in London due to wildfires, and the London Fire Brigade had its busiest day since the Blitz. There were over 2,000 excess deaths due to this heatwave, and air pollution due to the burning of fossil fuels causes over 40,000 premature deaths a year in the UK. I am a doctor. My governing body, the General Medical Council, tells me that I have a duty to act promptly when the health of my patients is threatened. I have tried all the usual methods of hoping to achieve climate policy change, such as writing to my MP, signing petitions and going on marches. None of that has worked, and the situation is getting worse. I want a livable planet for my patients and my children. That is why I am participating in non-violent civil disobedience. It is all that we have left as an option to try to persuade big banks like JPM, big business, the media and the government to cut the ties with fossil fuels and immediately end new coal, oil and gas extraction. The images you see on our posters show the recent appalling flooding in Pakistan and the London fires, and invite the viewer to consider whether the loss of people's homes is an act of vandalism by those who choose to continue to exacerbate the climate emergency, as compared with soup being wiped off a painting without damaging the painting, and whether the soup on a painting incident amounts to loss and damage which is greater than that suffered by the people of Pakistan, at least 1,600 of whom have perished and over 6 million remain in need of aid.
So I'm here because I believe that the Church's policy of engagement isn't working, and that actually we have to say now that the fossil fuel industry is blatantly not aligned with Paris. It's blatantly not going to help us stay below 1.5, and that we have to recognise that that policy has failed, and that now we have to withdraw our money to say that we're no longer going to licence the greenwashing. We're currently licensing the greenwashing, and we need to take that away. That's why I'm here.
I'm here as a member of the clergy because I have a pension fund invested in fossil fuels, and I've been lobbying for the Church of England to divest fully from fossil fuels for months and years now, and we should be leading from the front on issues of climate destruction, of which fossil fuels are a major emitter, and asking the Church of England to divest fully from Exxon, Total Energy and Shell.
I'm here as a member of the clergy of the Church of England for 30 odd years, and I've had 30 odd years of pension payments put into it, and I don't want my money, my pension, to come from dirty money, from oil. The Church doesn't invest in arms, thank goodness, in tobacco, or alcohol, pornography. Why is it still investing in oil, which we know is killing people at this moment around the world and is destroying the future of our world? So come on, Church of England, be prophetic, divest.
No new fossil fuel licenses! No new fossil fuel licenses! This is an intervention! We will not stand for any more exploitation of the North Sea or our planet's resources! This is an intervention! No new fossil fuel licenses! No new fossil fuel licenses! No new fossil fuel licenses! This is an intervention! No new fossil fuel licenses! No new fossil fuel licenses! Cut the ties to fossil fuels! Cut the ties to fossil fuels! Inside this building behind us, they are planning to issue over 100 new licenses to explore and exploit and extract gas and oil from the North Sea. This cannot be allowed to continue. We demand an end to new fossil fuel licenses. This is an intervention.
We've just finished our action at the International Maritime Organisation, and it's gone really well. We've poured a lot of oil, we've had a lot of smoke and flames and vomiting oil heads. The dirty scrubbers have cleaned it all away. We're here today to demand that the International Maritime Organisation cuts its ties with the fossil fuel industry. There's a lot of fossil fuel lobbyists who sit in there at the table making decisions about the environment, and we say that's absolutely wrong. That shouldn't happen. There shouldn't be fossil fuel lobbyists in the United Nations, in the International Maritime Organisation. They're not interested in making the ocean a habitable safe place for the future. They're only interested in making money for their shareholders in a short term. They're not thinking about the long-term health of the ocean, and we say that the fossil fuel lobbyists need to get out now. They need to cut their ties right now. At the moment there's subsidies, huge fuel subsidies for shipping, which enables factory fishing, like industrial scale fishing, and cargo shipping relentlessly around the world. A huge amount of cargo shipping is actually shipping fuel around the world, so it's like this awful self-perpetuating nightmare of consumption, and that needs to stop. We also want slow shipping, so steam sailing and wind-powered sailing to happen. The cost of not doing these things is huge. The cost of not doing these things is destroying the ocean.
chico que se llama de la eso. Bueno, ahora puede pegar otra vez.
Writers rebel for Extinction Rebellion. The Institute of Economic Affairs cut the ties with fossil fuels.
Cut the ties with fossil fuels.
Here outside the Institute for Economic Affairs with Writers Rebel on behalf of Extinction Rebellion. We're here as part of the Cut the Ties campaign, and what we're doing here today is making the invisible visible through direct action. The Institute for Economic Affairs frames itself as a charitable foundation, but for many decades now they've been at the forefront of lobbying against meaningful action in regards to environment and climate, as well as a lot of other matters. They are part of a nexus of dark-funded lobbyists who, on behalf of companies like ExxonMobil, who obviously have been funding climate denial for many decades now, and BP, have been basically fronting a cash for access deal within regards to politics and the fossil fuel industry. We believe most deeply that if people like William Blake were here and alive today, they would be horrified at the state of the planet, horrified at all that they hold dear being flushed into the gutters for money. And in my opinion, places like the Institute for Economic Affairs, they're like the dark satanic mills of the oil industry. This innocuous building at the heart of Westminster is pretty faceless, and yet its influence is vast and global. They've been taking money from ExxonMobil since 1967. They have the ears of ministers and powerhouses alike, and indeed also involved in media manipulation as well. So we're just here to make sure that what's in the dark comes to light, and to ask people like the Institute for Economic Affairs to cut the ties that they have so very strongly woven together, and to give the future a chance. These kind of
So we're at BP's offices today. These rebels here for Extinction Rebellion are decorating the building, drawing attention to BP's plans to destroy our planet, to destroy our one and livable home. And the message here today is that people need to cut the ties. People need to cut the ties to the fossil fuel industry. We're asking people to step away, do the right thing. Asking people to walk away, because history will not judge people kindly who've been associated with these companies. And we're also here today as well to expose this network of companies, organisations that support and enable the fossil fuel industry.
And all of those accountable. We need to stop now. Cut the ties to fossil fuels. Cut the ties to fossil fuels.
Stop, let's go.
Hi there, you're here with the Exile live stream. We're here outside the headquarters of Inios in London today with Plastics Rebellion. Hi, can you tell me who you are and why you're here today?
Yeah, I'm Janet from Plastics Rebellion. We're targeting Inios to say you're under the radar, but we're exposing you. You're complicit in the climate crisis, the ecological crisis, biggest petrochemical company in Europe, Jim Ratcliffe, who owns it, UK's richest man. We're asking them to turn off the tap.
Great, thank you very much.
It's that's the bell going.
for Iggy Fox.
You go for it and I'll do it.
You want to pour some?
You can help stick those down a bit, don't you?
Writers Rebel for Extinction Rebellion, cut the ties with fossil fuels. We're taking this action today at the Institute for Economic Affairs. Over 200 years ago, William Blake, the poet who wrote Jerusalem, put down these words: "What is the price of experience? Do men buy it for a song, or wisdom for a dance in the street?"
No, it is bought at the price of all a man hath, his house, his wife, his children.
Wisdom is sold in the desolate market, where none come to buy, and in the withered field, where the farmer ploughs for bread in vain.
It is an easy thing to triumph in the summer sun and in the vintage, and to sing on the wagon loaded with corn.
It is an easy thing to talk of patience to the afflicted, to speak the laws of prudence to the houseless wanderer, to listen to the hungry raven's cry in the wintry season, when the red blood is warm and filled with the marrow of lambs.
It is an easy thing to laugh at the wrathful elements, to hear the dog howl at the wintry door and the ox in the slaughterhouse moan, to see a God on every wind and a blessing on every blast, to hear the sounds of love in the thunderstorm that destroys our enemy's house, to rejoice in the blight that covers his field and the sickness that cuts off his children, while our olive and vine sing and laugh round our door and our children bring fruit and flowers.
Then the groan and the dollar are quite forgotten, and the slave grinding at the mill, and the captive in chains, and the poor in the prison, and the shattered bone hath lain him, groaning among the happier dead.
It is an easy thing to rejoice in the tents of prosperity.
Thus could we sing and thus rejoice, but it is not so with us. Writers Rebel for Extinction Rebellion at the Institute of Economic Affairs. Cut the ties with fossil fuels.
Cut the ties with fossil fuels.
Cut the ties with fossil fuels indeed.
Can you do that again quickly, please?
Yeah. Sorry, just taking a breath. Thanks, guys. Sorry. Go for it.
The whole thing, or what?
No, just the Writers Rebel for Extinction.
Okay. Writers Rebel, yep. Writers Rebel for Extinction Rebellion at the Institute of Economic Affairs. Cut the ties with fossil fuels.
Cut the ties with fossil fuels.
Okay.
Should we stand next to this for a bit?
Now we're all... Right, I'm going to try this.
Behind us, the Department for Business, Energy, Investment Strategy are putting together more than 100 new licenses for the exploration and extraction of oil and gas from the North Sea. We cannot afford these new fossil fuels. We cannot afford the money in the investment for their extraction. We cannot afford their burning, and we cannot afford the consequences for ourselves, our planet, and the rest of humanity as this continues. We will not allow this act of renewal of investment and seeking out and burning fossil fuels to proceed unchallenged. This is an intervention. No more new fossil fuel licences. Cut the ties to fossil fuels now. Cut the ties to fossil fuels. No more new gas and oil licences.
No more fossil fuels!
No more fossil fuels!
No more fossil fuels! No more fossil fuels! No more fossil fuels!
It's an intervention.
This is an intervention!
More dramatic things.
Hi, so what are you doing here?
So I'm Christelle, I'm a GP. I'm here today outside of JP Morgan's headquarters because JP Morgan are the world's leading fossil fuel financiers. As a bank, they've invested $317 billion since the Paris Agreement in oil, gas and coal projects. Their CEO earns $34 billion a year. As we all know, we're in a climate crisis, we're in a cost of living crisis with energy prices on the rise. It is the wrong thing to do. We are calling on them as a bank that are very influential globally to invest in the right thing, to invest in renewable energy, to invest in projects that are actually going to give us a livable planet. I'm actually glued to a poster of the floods in Pakistan right now. The COP27 negotiations have just been talking about loss and damage suffered by some of the world's poorest countries who have actually contributed least to the climate crisis. I think these guys should pay up. I don't think that they should be earning £34 billion investing in this. And I'm just here because I'm absolutely outraged by it.
Hello everyone, here we are outside Ontario Teachers Pension Fund, and we're just going to hear from one of the rebels that's decided to take action today. Hello there, can you tell us why you've decided to come and take action today?
Oh, hi, yes. I've decided to take action today because I'm the mother of an 18-year-old adult now, and I don't know what world I brought her into where the government is acting in favour of all the companies that are propping up the fossil fuel industry, which we're trying to draw attention to today. These companies are what drives expansion and what keeps the fossil fuel economy alive. This particular company right here is an investment company, the profits of which goes to the teachers of Canada who deserve their profits. However, what this company does is aggressively drive expansion of airport infrastructure against the will of A, local citizens, B, it's acting against the world's population by the emissions it's going to create in pursuit of these profits, and C, the teachers of Ontario who actually receive the benefits of this don't want their money to be invested in this. They've spent their entire career teaching children, and yet their pension, they have to live with the knowledge that their pension comes from profiting from car parks by expanding airport infrastructure.
Thank you. So I understand they're one of the biggest private airport investors in Europe, and yet no one's really heard of them. So what is it, why are these companies so elusive, and what's the message to people watching this, that the government are essentially propping up these companies that are essentially involved in the web of lies?
I'm not really sure it's elusive. It conducts its business in plain sight and is supported by our own government planning laws. Now, this company owns £250 billion of assets globally, which it pushes aggressively to expand. And in airports, it actually received government bailouts and furlough money despite having a fire and rehire tactic, which enabled it to actually make a profit, a record profit of 5.5 billion from other people's misery in 2021 alone.
And I understand that was when they were still taking furlough money and supporting fire and rehire policies within the aviation industry, right?
That's correct. And this is what governments and systems worldwide are. This is the structure of the system that we're supporting here by our current regulations and laws. So we're actually putting the profits and interests of this company above the health of any global citizens, especially the ones that are protesting about it in their own location.
Great, and I saw an interview from one of the teachers in Ontario that is a member of this pension fund. They have no idea that their pensions have been invested in airport expansion. She was devastated to hear that it was against the will of the people, and you know, there's absolutely no transparency.
Exactly right. As I say, this pension fund is for the profit of the teachers of Ontario, and when they found out what their money was invested in, they were devastated that they'd spent their whole career teaching children who are going to be adults, bringing them into this world where we can't actually have any imperative to change, despite being on the precipice of disaster. We've got no clear pathway, no government policy to reach. To even keep warming within our Paris climate limit of 1.5 degrees C. There's absolutely no direction from government, and the Lords have lately said it's all going to have to come from citizens and behaviour change, because actually there's no direction from government on this, and there's no regulation on companies that profit in this way.
Great, thank you very much. Well, thanks for taking action today. Well, there you go, you heard it. The message is cut the ties. There's many of these companies that are either operating via think tanks and lobbying our government, or just behind the scenes and no one knows of them. They have a different name for their company, where they own the airports. I believe they're involved in Bristol, Birmingham, London City, among others in the UK and around Europe, Copenhagen and many more. So yeah, please do spread the message and make sure that we cut the ties.
Hi, so can you tell me what you're doing here?
Well, I'm here with Doctors for Extinction Rebellion outside the Victoria Embankment office of JP Morgan Chase, which is the world's biggest investor in fossil fuels. Since the Paris Agreement of 2015, JP Morgan Chase has invested over $317 billion into fossil fuel projects. We're here to ask them to cut the ties with the fossil fuel industry. Doctors for Extinction Rebellion have been carrying out actions at branches of JPM for the last year. There have been quite a few actions. In September 21, that was the first action, and the group handed in a letter to the CEO, Jamie Dimon, which requests that JP Morgan Chase cut the ties with the fossil fuel industry, that they stop investing in new fossil fuel projects, and that they have a genuine plan to reduce emissions. Last summer, here in the UK, we had extreme temperatures of over 40 degrees, and this resulted in wildfires across London. 40 homes were burnt down in London alone, and there were other fires widespread across the country. London Fire Brigade had its busiest day since the Blitz.
I'm here because JP Morgan are the biggest investors in fossil fuel in the world. The Banking on Chaos report has shown them consistently, ever since the Paris Agreement was signed, to be the bank that is investing the most in fossil fuels. And fossil fuels are causing climate change and air pollution. So air pollution is already killing outdoor air pollution is killing over 4 million people globally every year. Climate change is killing more people from heat waves. I mean, even in the UK, over 3,000 people died in the heat wave this summer. And then you look at the floods in Pakistan, the prolonged drought in the Horn of Africa, the wildfires that we've seen around the world. This is devastating people's livelihoods. It's driving 20 million people from their home every year now. So, on top of that, climate change drives more infectious diseases like pandemics that we've all just been through, but also things like malaria, Lyme's disease in the UK, waterborne diseases like cholera, and obviously one of the biggest threats is to our food and water security. In this country we're not food secure, we import 50% of our food, but around the world the problem's much bigger, and it's driving mass migration, which is going to get worse and worse. They're talking about over 1 billion climate refugees by the middle of the century. We have no plan for what we're going to do about that. On top of conflict, I'm not just a doctor, I'm also a mother. I've got 3 children, and I'm absolutely terrified of what's happening. And so what we're asking JP Morgan to do is to stop investing in making this situation worse and start investing in the solutions, because we have the solutions. The IEA has made a big report which was published last year, which said we don't need more fossil fuels, and they made a roadmap. That's what we want JP Morgan to be investing in, so that's why we're here.
Thank you.
The manager of the bank, and what we're asking is for them to invite us to a board meeting, where we can discuss why we're doing what we're doing today, and where we can discuss their net zero ambitions, which we don't think are good enough. This is something that we'd like to talk to the manager about today, if they're willing to come out. We are willing to undo ourselves if we do get invited to the board meeting to discuss our concerns. Otherwise we will keep coming back again and again, as Doctors for XR already have, until JP Morgan actually start listening. We've got an executive summary there of the Banking on Climate Chaos report that was done by the Rainforest Alliance, where JP Morgan ranked top in the league table of fossil fuel financiers, so that's why we've chosen them.
Thank you.
Can you tell us who you are doing this for? Who you are doing this for? Extinction Rebellion. And we're rejecting the marketing companies telling lies about the state of the climate. They're greenwashing. It's not acceptable.
So if you'd like to come and see what we'll do, is we'll just pop you between my colleague here in that middle seat. You're okay, up your hand. Just in that middle seat, and if you sit on his left hand side, in which case I'll just leave you in this seat. If not, don't worry about it, hop in the front with me.
Intervention! No new fossil fuel licenses! No new fossil fuel licenses! This is an intervention! We will not stand for any more exploitation of the North Sea or our planet's resources! This is an intervention! No new fossil fuel licenses! No new fossil fuel licenses! No new fossil fuel licenses! This is an intervention! No new fossil fuel licenses! No new fossil fuel licenses! Cut the ties to fossil fuels! Cut the ties to fossil fuels! Inside this building behind us, they are planning to issue over 100 new licenses to explore and exploit and extract gas and oil from the North Sea. This cannot be allowed to continue. we demand an end to new fossil fuel licences. This is an intervention.
So I'm just going to say a few words about why it's not in the interest of anybody, but even arch. I'm just going to talk a little bit about the developing momentum behind climate responsibility and point out some of the reasons why ARCH should be put off insuring ECOP or any other climate and ecological disaster. Finally, after 30 years of battling, spearheaded by the small island developing states, supported by the group of 77, which are actually 135 countries now, and the least developed countries, loss and damage is an actual thing. A fund for this has been recognised. Of all the rubbish that 30 years of COP negotiations have put the world through, the disgusting behaviour of the rich world concerning any type of finance has been almost unbearable. First, there is climate finance, 100 billion to, quote, help, unquote, most vulnerable countries adapt to the new and much worse world created by the rich and polluting, and enabled by all the places that XR are stopping at today, including ARCH. It's not enough money, it hasn't been paid, and even where it is paid, they've not created new money. They've just moved it around, or they've just done loans instead of grants. It is shameful to belong to this world. But if that is shameful, loss and damage is worse. Loss and damage is the economic loss and damage to livelihoods and property, and non-economic loss in terms of life and loss to biodiversity and cultural heritage. It includes impacts from extreme weather and also impacts from slow onset, like glaciers. It's hard to calculate the economic impact of tuna shoals migrating, or 90% of Lake Chad drying up. Repeat that across the globe. But suffice it to say that everyone talks about at least $1 trillion in loss and damage by 2050. And the more they pollute, the more it'll cost. So our minds inevitably turn then to who pays. And that's why the rich world erased loss and damage in Glasgow, and why it wasn't even on the agenda for COP27. But did that stop the small island states, the G77, the least developed countries, and the entire activist world at Egypt? Despite 600 representatives of the fossil fuel industry, despite the rich world's antagonism, money and corruption, David won a small victory against Goliath. A fund apparently will be set up. We can only imagine now the conversations in governments and places like ARCH and insurance and banking throughout the world. We are sure that the activist world, like XR, will not stay quiet on this matter, and hopefully soon the concept of loss and damage will be embedded in people's consciousness. After all, the fossil fuel industry is already hated, especially now, and the governments of the rich world will struggle to get elected if they have to tax their citizens to pay for loss and damage. I'm sure their minds, like ours, and commentators already, will turn to corporate finance. And considering that the fossil fuel industry has made an average of $3 billion of profit per day for the last 50 years, that would make sense. And so it would not seem any longer a safe option to insure such a ludicrous and bizarre idea as ECOP. Not only a carbon bomb, but a more or less definite local polluter on a devastating scale. So just to
highlight that it's time for Arch and other such enablers to think more carefully about the risks that they too are taking by ensuring ventures that are no longer insurable.
We're here outside the Institute for Economic Affairs with Writers Rebel on behalf of Extinction Rebellion. We're here as part of the Cut the Ties campaign, and what we're doing here today is making the invisible visible through direct action. The Institute for Economic Affairs.
So what I'd like you all to do is have a look around at somebody you don't know. Look into their eyes. Somebody you don't know. You're all amazing. These people are your allies. Give them a cheer. Because most of the people here came today to support with very little idea of the details of the plan. I had no idea. I've just been handed this, so I'm going to find out, as you do, what has been going on. Some of you might have caught up on social media with what's been happening, so I'm going to summarise what I've been given so far. Today, we have taken non-violent direct action at 12 fossil fuel enablers all across London, sending a universal message to these organisations to cut the ties to fossil fuels. I'll say that again, that got a good reaction. Cut the ties to fossil fuels. Many of these names have not been targeted before by climate activists. Many of these names you may not know. They rely on operating under the radar. Most of them have pages on their website explaining to you their green credentials. But in one way or another, they are all choosing to profit from the destruction of our planet rather than using their skills to build a better world. So, is there anyone from Exile Cymru here? Exile Wales? Hey! Exile Cymru visited Hill and Knowlton Strategies. Who's heard of them? Exactly. They are a PR firm. They have taken money from the likes of ExxonMobil, Shell, Chevron, Saudi Aramco. And what Hill and Knowlton Strategies do is they greenwash the activities of these businesses. So we call on Hill and Knowlton to cut the ties to fossil fuels.
Cut the ties!
Christian Climate Action, where are you? They get a bonus point. They've been to 2 places today. They visited Britain's leading arms manufacturer, BAE Systems. BAE Systems supply weaponry to conflicts that largely affect people living on the front lines of climate change. They also provide military and technical support to Saudi Arabia to enable the Saudi Arabian regime to produce oil. From there, they have gone on to Church House. That is the offices of the Church of England to peacefully protest their failing strategy of staying invested in fossil fuels on the grounds that they can influence better from the inside rather than divesting. How is that working out, Christian Climate Action? So what do we call on the Church of England to do? Cut the ties to fossil fuels. Plastics Rebellion. Anyone from Plastics Rebellion here? They were at the offices of Inios. Do we know who Inios are? They operate in a very secret building in Knightsbridge. Some of the rebels are still there on the roof. Inios is one of the world's largest petrochemical producers and a significant player in the oil and gas market. Many of the plastics produced in the UK start their lives at Inios's plant in Grangemouth in Scotland. So what do we call on Inios to do? Cut the ties to fossil fuels. XR Youth, the East of England. Anyone here? Hey! Just only one made it out. So they carried out a joint action at the offices of the world's largest oil field service provider, and here's where my pronunciation needs some help. Schlumberger. Schlumberger. Anyway, they've rebranded because they don't want to be called that anymore because apparently it's bad PR for them, isn't it, to be targeted by climate activists. So what are we going to carry on calling them? We know who they are and what they're doing, and what do we call on them to do? HS2 Rebellion. They went to the offices of multinational law firm Evershed Sutherland. Anyone heard of them?
Yes, I've heard of the
Can I quote you on that? They act as solicitors, lawyers, for HS2 and also for ExxonMobil. They are the lawyers who bring about the injunctions that try to curb legitimate environmental protest. These are effectively laws, private laws for the rich. So what do we call on Evershed Sutherland to do? Ocean Rebellion. They held protests outside the offices of the International Maritime Organization. Anyone heard of that? One of their beautiful Ocean Rebellion performances highlighted the UN body's refusal to regulate shipping emissions. Now I'm going to read a statistic. 40% of fossil fuels burnt are burnt moving fossil fuels. Think about that. 40% of fossil fuels burnt are burnt moving fossil fuels. So what do we call on the International Maritime Organization to do? Writers rebel. Hey! They were at the offices of the, well, it says here, free market think tank, the Institute of Economic Affairs. The Institute has received money from fossil fuel companies, but they don't declare it. They're not very transparent in their funding. They regularly publish materials questioning the consensus science on climate change, and it has a huge influence on politicians. So what do we call, this is a difficult one, what do we call on the Institute of Economic Affairs to do? Tell the truth and cut the ties. Doctors for XR. They glued themselves to the windows at the London HQ of JP Morgan. They pasted images to the front facade of the building showing scenes of climate breakdown both here in the UK and overseas. JP Morgan are responsible as the world's biggest fossil fuel financiers for those scenes that they pasted on the windows. So what do we call on JP Morgan to do? Money Rebellion. They were at the offices of Arch Insurance. Heard of them? Arch Insurance are the understood to be in negotiation with fossil fuel giant Total about the insurance of East Africa crude oil pipeline, the EACOP. If you don't know about the EACOP, read up on it. It's an abomination, and we need to get behind Money Rebellion's campaign to persuade insurers to remove their services. Because with all no fossil fuel projects, there are hundreds of insurances that they require. If they cannot get insurance for those projects, what happens to the projects? They fail. So what do we call an Arch Insurance to do? Sky Rebellion. They were at the offices of the London offices of the Ontario Teachers Pension Plan. What has the Ontario Teachers Pension Plan got to do with fossil fuels? The Canadian-based pension fund invests in infrastructure projects, including the controversial expansion of Bristol Airport, which coincidentally it owns. So what do we call on the Ontario Teachers' Pension Plan to do? Rebels from the southeast of England, they visited the head offices in St James's Square of BP. Last quarter, they announced profits of $7 billion. Big profits before people, before planet. What do we call on BP to do?
Pay their taxes.
Any more? All over the city right now, as I speak, in the rain, there is a crew of fly posters from the Paint the Streets team. So big up the Paint the Streets team. And there's also a crew of subdivisors all over the city. And they are replacing big corporations' adverts with a Cut the Ties advert. So I want to thank them. They can't be here because they're all busy at work. And this is most definitely last but not least, XR Rhythms of Resistance, our beautiful sambas. In June, London endorsed the Fossil Fuel Non-Proliferation Treaty. So XR Rhythms have been marching through London, visiting the target organisations and highlighting the web of fossil fuel enablers that are still working in this city here today. What do we call on them to do? So basically, thank you. Fantastic work from everyone today. This is work that... One more. Late edition. I mean, this could keep going on all day, couldn't it?
There was one more at the DEIS, Department of Business.
There was another that I didn't know about. I haven't been told about the Department of Business as usual.
Yeah.
Department of Business, Energy, Industrial Greenwash and Strategy.
The ones who are about to try and license another 100 plus.
100 new fossil fuel licenses from BEIS. What do we call on the Department of Business, Energy and Industrial Greenwash to do? We need to remove the social licence for fossil fuel activity in the UK. It needs to become as unacceptable as smoking advertising. I was thinking I was really desperate for a cigarette. Unacceptable as smoking advertising. It eventually became like not wearing a seatbelt is socially unacceptable. We need to make enabling fossil fuel businesses business as usual socially unacceptable. I also want to thank the tech crew for coming all the way up to London today to put on this little joining here today. So round of applause for them. And thank you to Leon for playing us some tunes. And I want to say one last thing, last thing. Whilst we have been working on Cut the Ties and bringing this message to fossil fuel enablers, it's had a mirror effect within XR. Ties have formed between a range of autonomous groups. Each has their particular focus, but willing to work together and carry a strong joint message. Ties have formed between rebels working together and supporting each other. So I want you all to look into each other's eyes again and give yourselves a round of applause. I know I've said last thing once or twice, but this is definitely the last thing. You might ask, why weren't Shell on the list? You might ask why weren't Coca-Cola on the list? I might answer, how do you know they're not? Thank you all. Because of your actions today to hold fossil fuels to account, they are weaker and XR is stronger. Thank you so much.
one thing to add, just so we know, there have been 11 arrests today. 11 brave rebels we need to thank for putting their liberty on the line. I'd like to invite someone who's no stranger to actions, and in fact actions involving Shell. Someone who has got a little story to tell. We all know him very well. Can we invite Simon up? Simon, you come and talk to us, please.
Thank you very much, human beings of XR. This is a conspiracy of love in action. We must absolutely enroll more people in that conspiracy. Just over there is the River Thames. Every single second that that river is flowing, there are over 900,000 particles of microplastic pollution floating past. Every second we are here, that is more pollution entering our waters, entering our food chains, entering our bodies. Our democracy has been bought and sold by companies like Shell. It has been bought and sold through companies and organizations like the Institute for Economic Affairs. Today, we attempted to rip back the mask of the companies that are forcing the death of hundreds of thousands of human beings. These are the kinds of people who think it is merely enough to sit back and profit while people die, and who think it is merely enough for, on a planet that is finite, to have infinite growth whilst tomorrow starves. And that is what we face. These are the companies that buy and sell organisations like the Met Police, who buy and sell the Tory government, who buy and sell the press. Their faces need to come into the light. We must take action at their addresses and at their organisations more and more if people are to understand and join the dots up. At the moment, oh, my hand. At the moment, we are facing an uphill struggle. We are in a situation where ministers like Suella Braverman want to jail more and more of us, where the Met Police are arresting journalists, where leafleters and supporters who are committing no crime are being put in, who are being charged and put in jail. We have 37 brave activists right now in jail, and none of this is known. None of this is common knowledge. It takes throwing fucking paint at a Van Gogh to get the public attention and to get the press's attention, because they are bought and sold. Everyone here, your hearts cannot be bought and sold. And so I thank you 100% from the bottom of my being that there are still people who will stand up for tomorrow. This is the conspiracy of love, and it is not going away. Thank you very much. Now for the Met Police karaoke section. Over to you, Marvin.
We have invited Sergeant Marvin if he wants to do some... Are we ready, Marvin? If you want to do your PA number, not now? Okay. I think we're going to wind it up. I can't think there's anything else we have to... Okay, we've got to go. Yeah, okay. If anyone's got anything they desperately want to speak to this lovely crowd here, then now's your chance to do it. But otherwise, we're going to wind up and go and get a beer or a cup of coffee.
Hello, everybody. My name's Etienne, and I've just been thrust into this job to say thank you for everybody for being here. I was helping with the live stream to show the amazing bravery, the actions of some brave rebels at the BP headquarters. That tiny little BP logo. You'd think they were trying to hide something. The worst and murkiest, dirtiest and wrongest thing in the history of civilization, that they are killing us. They know about it. And it's so wrong. So I want to say thank you on behalf of everyone watching on the live stream and everyone who's participated, supported, people who can't be here. We are working, are we not, towards the big one. In April next year, we're going to get 100,000 people onto the street. I don't know how we're going to do that. We've got the ways, we've got the knowledge. We're going to try our guts out. So I'm just going to say to you all, thank you. I will see you very soon, and please work hard, rest up a bit, but then let's get out there and let's make this happen. I like what he said, a conspiracy of love in action. Let's make that conspiracy spread around like wildfire. Love to you all. Well done, everybody, and see you soon. Extinction! Extinction! All right.